It's Friday, May 24th, 2024. Start off with our traditional promotional segment, which is nice and short because all I have to say now is if you'd like to support our show, all you need to do is go to supportourshow.com. And the one other thing that doesn't include on that page of donation options is that, to my knowledge at this point, the code Ozone, that is OZONE, will still, I believe, get you 2 months free hosting on Libsyn, which we've been on. I'm not being paid for this. There's no kickbacks or anything, but I do feel the need to mention it because I've seen a lot of these companies kind of folding lately and a lot of different turbulence within the podcasting industry as the ad market has collapsed. But we've never hosted on anything else. Libsyn has remained scarily steady all this time.
We've also never really made any money. I mean, let's just be clear.
Well, but I mean, there are shows that make money that are on Libsyn. But what I'm saying is from a bedrock level.
Yes, they're still there. Yeah.
As far as they haven't suddenly doubled their prices. You know what I mean? They haven't done stuff like that. So
it's not a shill. It's just a fact. We've been on there forever.
No, that's why I'm making a point of saying I'm not being. Although I did get another email from Manscaped actually this week, asking for.
You know what? Hold on one second.
Yeah.
I think they did an ad. I want to see. It's Manscaped.
I think it's Manscaped. I think it's.
I think they did an ad.
Tense.
Okay, they did. I'm going to show something to you.
Oh God, here we go.
Because say what you will.
Yeah. About
advertising, but I did find this genuinely funny, and it actually did get a big laugh out of my wife, and I was kind of like, you know what? I was like, I do appreciate a company that takes themselves not that seriously. Yeah. It's like I said, it's like a minute at most. Oh my God,
it's so loud. Okay.
But I found it. See, there you go.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. And you know what? Here, you don't have to describe it. We don't need to give them that kind of advertising. That's fine. Funny. But it is a funny ad, right?
Well, all I'll say is if you want to find it, it's called Manscaped the Boys.
And it got a good laugh out of my wife, and it got a laugh out of me, and I was like, you know what? You can annoy me with advertising.
Yeah. If
you give me something with it, give me a laugh.
But the interesting,
but they keep coming to you for that, huh?
This is I think they probably have a list and they just because there was a spelling error in it, so I have a feeling it's just a form thing. I mean, I'm sure it is. Well, I'll literally read it because I actually had to read it twice because I started laughing at it. But this one line is very funny where I'm like, okay, this is clearly not a dedicated effort to pursue our business. Hold on, let me go to the show again. Here it is. I won't. Just want to check in if you are interested in promoting Manscaped on your channels. If yes, you can't just respond back to this email and I will get back to you with all the details. I'm so tempted to say, well, if I can't respond to this, what am I supposed to do?
That's a decisive error.
That's a autocorrect type error. I'm
a friend of mine, someone I speak to somewhat regularly, was telling me that they like to do some manscaping, right? Because they're not a big fan of a lot of body hair, right? And they were like, and they said, do you manscape? And I was like, no. I was like, I'm so hairy that if I shaved any part of my body, it would look weird. Well, many years ago when I was I guess a crazier man. I once shaved my crotchal area just to see like what it would look like. And then afterwards, I thought to myself, it looks like
horrible.
a clearing. It looks like a clearing in a forest with a tree in the middle.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like
it was weird tree all over the place. Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, right. But then this person was telling me about how they do like to scape quite a bit, and they got a new buzzer.
Here's the thing. This is the thing that has irritated me now, because, and I do somewhat blame the company for this.
Yeah,
is that term now means for most people shaving anything below the belt. That's what it tends to mean. It doesn't really mean that, or it didn't originally.
What this guy does is this guy actually likes to shave all of his body hair down at different lengths. So he doesn't like to have like long arm hair.
Well, there is a thing with that I have heard women talking about. Yeah. Some women. I don't want to generalize too much, but something I only heard discussion of this within recent years of this idea of all the hair or none of the hair. This is a thing, which I never had known about.
Interesting, yeah.
Where there are women who specifically either want you to do nothing and just let it go.
Or do it all, right?
Or it better be gone. But you can't have it. A mix is their problem. It's disconcerting if there are areas missing and bush on your your chest but not below the belt, or the other way around.
Yeah, well, this guy, he got a new razor, a new buzzer to do this, and he was testing it on his stomach, and he realized he got the settings wrong, so he shaved a totally bald patch on his stomach, and he was trying desperately to hide it from his wife, because he was like, she's going to give me so much shit. And I was like, well, it is funny. I mean, I believe in owning that shit myself.
Why not just say, I was trying this out, and I'm glad I tried it out here and not on my head.
Oh, but it is funny. I mean,
no, it's funny, but I mean, your wife's not.
No,
really?
I don't like shaving my fucking face because that hair comes in so fast. That's why I have a beard. Yeah. It's not because I sit there and I'm like, beards are cool. I have a beard because I can't keep up with it.
You know what? And if can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I've had the same thought. The problem is, I know exactly when I need to trim my goatee because it begins to itch. Slightly, but then within 2 to 3 days, it's so itchy I can't take it.
Okay. Just to give you a key tip that I learned not that long ago, if you use Head and Shoulders on your beard, you don't get the itch. I didn't believe it because that's for your head, really? But if you use Head and Shoulders 3 times a week, or at least like. Yeah, I do that. So I like just a weird tip, but yes, I have a big, thick, bushy beard.
It makes sense, I guess. It does make sense.
Yeah, and what it is it's the skin on your face is trying to keep itself moist, but it's got all this stuff now growing on, so it's having a hard time figuring out the balance in the basically the pH balance between the skin and the hair. Plus, it's on your face, which is all more oily, more dirty.
Yeah. But that's why I know I can't go past it. But I'll try that. I'm curious. I'll push it. Once it starts itching, I'll try the Head and Shoulders.
I use Head and Shoulders 3 days a week on my beard, and I don't get dandruff, and I don't get itchiness, and I'm totally fine. But also, there is an adjustment period too. Like when you start to get enough hair on your face that it like kind of covers up the skin completely.
Yeah.
But I can't keep up with it. I just can't, and the problem is then I end up looking really, I don't get like good looking 5 o'clock shadow. I get like somebody's been on a bender recently shadow. Like I skip 5 o'clock shadow and go straight to like 10 o'clock shadow.
I have found one of the few positive ends of aging in terms of visual appearance is I find that the snowy 5 o'clock shadow is somehow endearing to myself. I don't know if anybody else.
You know what? I'll support that. Yeah, it does look because it gives you like a silver glaze almost.
You look slightly frosted.
Yeah,
it's kind of like you become like a cinnamon bun in a way. It's like there's this light glazing.
No, I don't mind that. Yeah, it's funny. But it is like a silver glazing.
It's like a light sprinkling of sugar on your face.
But my whole thing is like I can't keep up with my face. Like you want me to shave my body? I'm like, holy shit! I am a hairy man. We'll just put it like that. Like I am a Wolverine level hairy, right? No, I mean like what's funny is that whenever I get tattoos, I end up shaving the hair the night before to make it easier for my tattooist, and then the day of I shave it again with a razor because there's just like it just comes in so fast, So it's like no way, like to keep up with that, no. No, it comes in so fast, and like the whole idea of you said like that some women don't want you to touch it or
All or nothing.
Yeah, and the thing is, I do think there's a middle ground. If you're somebody who is willing to like buzz it down so it's shorter, that doesn't look weird.
And again, I that's why I was very quick to say, well, not ever. This is not all women.
Yeah,
this
but it's
I've
the whole.
This
you know what?
phrasing come up.
Listen, women who don't have pubic hair, that creeps me out.
I don't like it.
When I was younger, I think I was like, yeah, cool. And then as I got older, I was like, no, you know what? Too young. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing is, I think when you're younger, you're not thinking about the psychology of what that is reflecting.
Yeah.
And then once you know and think about what that's indicative
like I don't mind. Listen, I don't care
gross.
whatever shape you want it or how short you want it, but when there's like nothing there, you know.
Oh, shapes are adorable.
I'll even take like a silver 5 o'clock shadow. You know what I mean? Like just.
You know, shop through go to a kitchen website and look through cookie cutter shapes and do that. Have fun with it. You know, have a good time. Why not?
Have you ever seen that thing that you can bite that gives you like a perfect goatee shape?
Yes, I have, but I would never ever even. Okay, I'll tell you why that's stupid.
Yeah.
Well, I won't say stupid. Why it never made sense for me is I have never found it that difficult with a mirror to figure out how to make things even.
Do you know what I hate? This is the thing I hate most about beards. So when you grow the beard, I don't know if you get this, but you get basically there's the hair on your cheeks that never kind of grows in completely.
Oh yeah, that's
it's like
annoying.
Yeah, so I shave that off, right? So that's the only thing I shave because it doesn't grow that fast, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I give my beard like kind of give it a little bit of a curved shape, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is getting the symmetry on that sometimes because I'm dealing with my face where it's like, well, one ear's off from the other slightly, and your eyes are slightly off. And
that's where maintaining a goatee makes it where I don't have to worry about that because I get that as part of it. So it's a real easy thing to do. I'm making shapes on my faces if anybody can see it.
Yeah, I only recently got into the fine art of like beard shaping, where like we're not even maintenance. Is that I used to. What it is in Vermont, I used to have this really great barber, and like he would kind of give me like a little bit of shape, and then I would just let it grow, and then every now and then I would go in. But like, as now, I was like, I haven't really found a barber down here, so like I was forced to have to kind of shave it myself. I had a weird it's good that we brought this up. I had a really weird barbershop experience down here, which kind of put me off. So my beard was getting long, and I had hair, and I don't like to have hair on my head, but it grows in so fast. And I was trying to find a barbershop, and I found this. I guess it's a string of like sports related barbershops. Like they're very like, we have TVs on and football and sports. And I was like, oh God, I was like, that's so growy.
Isn't that Sport Cuts?
I think it's something like that, right? Yeah. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a chain of them.
Yeah.
And
I'm pretty sure it's Sports Cuts. Yeah.
So I went in there one time because I had some time before I had to pick my son up, and I was like, they looked empty. And I was like, and that's my thing. I hate waiting. I hate having to wait for a haircut. I just want to go to some place when it's off hours, get in and out, be done. But I went to this place, and I went in expecting it to be this very sort of like male broy experience where there's like sports TVs are on, everyone's talking about sports and like, but I walked in there, and first off, it was all young women. And I was like, okay, but that still falls within the reality of the situation. It could be all young women, right?
Sure.
And then the one young woman that helped me was basically in like ultra tight yoga pants and like a tank top with a push-up bra. And I was like, okay. It's like, that's fine. I was like, because normally you go to a barbershop or you go to like someplace to get your hair cut, and it's a bunch of usually either like I'm used to going to places and having like overweight middle-aged women.
Sure.
So either way, young girl, probably like in her early 20s, and man, while I was there, the place started to fill up, right? And what was weird for me before I get into the actual haircut was that the clientele was like all Asian and Indian.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
In an area that is like, there's a lot of Asian and Indian down here, but like there were no white faces. It was very strange to me. And I was like, is this a thing? Like coming. So, and then I got my hair cut from this woman, and I can't tell you, like, I'm just going to say that my haircut bordered on What's a nice way to put this? Someone who gave a good haircut. Let me say it up front. She did give a really great haircut.
Yeah.
But it was borderline like, it was like lap dancing without the lap.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Sure.
There were like breasts in my face. She was like very sort of touchy. And it was weird. Like, because like, I just wanted to get a haircut.
Right.
I think go pick my son up. And
I don't need haircut with completion. Thank you.
And
yeah.
I need to get a lot of hair in places. And like I said, she was very
with words.
And she was very nice. And I started talking to her because I was kind of like, I'm chatty. So I started talking to her, and what was funny was that when she realized that I couldn't see with my glasses off, because like, you know, I always, this is something I think that's very important, always play up how blind you are. Never let people know how good your eyesight really is. Sure. If you wear glasses. It is something to always keep in the pocket, right?
Yeah.
So I told her that I couldn't see her with my glasses off, and she proceeded to like get her cleavage right in my face. Like, you know, normally when people are like shaving the top of your head, they usually stand behind you.
Yeah.
Not this girl, right in my face.
Wow. Okay.
It was such a weird experience. And I was like, is this what they do here? Like, I don't know if this is like a mandate from the company or if it's just this one. And it was just very weird. And then when I was leaving, I noticed that this one in particular girl was the one who was doing it the worst. The other two were much more, they seemed much more sedate about it.
Okay.
But then when I was leaving, they have a thing on the board that shows you like who everybody's waiting for. Like you can ask for specific haircut people, right? And the girl that I went to, everyone was like waiting for her.
Okay.
Like she had a wait of like an hour and a half.
Sure.
And I just happened to walk in when no one was around. But it was such a weird experience because I was like, when I think like, because for me, when I think barbershop, it's usually like some Greek, Middle Eastern, or Italian older men. Like this is my experience in North Jersey anyway. Right. And it's like, you know, it's usually pretty quiet. What do you want? Everybody's got kind of a grease back hairdo. You know, sometimes they're wearing like, you know, old school aprons while they, while they cut your hair. And it's like, it's very straightforward. It's something out of like a movie from the 50s. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Whereas when I went up to Vermont, it was very different than that.
Right.
Different. It's like a different country. So then when I came back down here, because I'm no longer in North Jersey, I'm kind of mid. It's different again, and like I can't find that same kind of barbershop. I tried. I found one place that seemed like it was, but it went too far. Where I sat down and it was a really old guy, and like he immediately launched into like really racist political shit.
Hey, let me ask you something. Are you one of those immigrant types?
He's
Where
like,
you from, son?
Yeah, what do you think of all these spics, huh? There's just too many of them, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, let's just shave my head, man. I gotta get out of here. But yes, but it was just such a strange thing that it like I went to this barbershop and it was like, it was just so weird.
Does that slur apply? If they knew you were Cuban, would they use the same slur?
Oh yeah,
Is that all?
I am absolutely a spic. It's just nobody knows it. I don't know. Listen, the weird racial experiences I've had since I've come down here. I told you about the Chinese lady who thought that I was Russian mob.
That makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I went to in the mall.
Tattoos. It's really
yeah. So
especially if you watch movies where a Russian mobster, they always look like Mickey Rourke and Iron Man too. I mean, that's what they think.
Yeah,
the Russian mob is.
I go in the mall. They have like a little stand where there's like usually like some very old Asian men and women, and they give you like chair massages where you sit. And the thing I like about them is that they're fucking relentlessly evil to you. Like they're really hardcore, which is what I need because I lift a lot of weights. So whenever I go, they're always really mean to my shoulders, but they're very nice. It's very funny. And the one time I went, this one woman was like, "Who made you get your tattoos?" in her broken English. And I was like, I got my tattoos. And she was like, "Are you Russian?" And I was like, "What?" And yeah, it's like she thought I was like some kind of Russian mob. And I was like, no. I was like, no, I'm not that at all. It's like, we're fine, we're cool. But it's like, yeah, it's the whole assumptions, So, which is hilarious because I just went to a water park.
Yeah, I'm Russian mob. Dos Vidania, baby.
I went to a water park recently for my son's birthday, and I think it's the first time I've been in a bathing suit in like years. Especially now that I'm pretty much have like full sleeves and full legs, and it is comical the reaction you get from people, because in a water park, everyone's basically stripped down to trunks, right? Except there are some with the women, there's some crazy bathing suits, but for men, everyone's pretty stripped down to trunks, so you're kind of at whatever you are. So it was funny because walking around, because like my wife is like, you cut kind of a weird figure. She's like, because there you are, you're playing with your kids and you're running around. She's like, but you're this immense guy who's just like covered, So it was very funny. But yes, I really all this wanted to get back to the fact that I had such a peculiar experience at the barbershop. Not that I wouldn't, and the funny thing is, it's not that I wouldn't go back. It's just that it was not what I was expecting in any way, shape, or form. Like, I think you kind of have to be in a mood, like, to get your hair cut and be, I guess for lack of a better word, like, I guess you can't really call it manhandled because she's not a man handling you. What would you call that? Woman handled? What happens when you get, like, sexually harassed by a female barber? But, like, in not a terrible way.
What do you call it? Oh, God, what's the word for it? It's like a sanctioned groping.
Yeah. You know what? I guess you could call it that, sanctioned groping. There's got to be a term for that. Yeah, what is sexual harassment when it's not harassing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that's consent, but that's consensual sex is what that is.
Well, that's not. Listen, that's not what we were doing. Okay.
Well, listen.
I had my clothes on.
No. I'm sorry. I have to disagree. If you said no, put your hand up and walked out, well, then you've stopped it. So you allowed it to go on. You decided.
Yeah, oh yeah. I thought that it was hilariously weird.
You had as close to a more or less a Hollywood Me Too moment as you could. In that, no, stick with me. In that, the person had a power to do something you needed to get done, and you accepted this uncomfortable physical intimacy, or whatever you want to call it, contact, in exchange for that service being performed.
Yeah, and I think that's the only really weird part about it to me, is that, like, if you go someplace where you're looking for that, I mean, like, I've been to strip bars before. If you go to a strip bar, you know what you're getting into, right? Mm. But when you go to a sports barbershop, it's not the thing you expect to happen. So then it does happen, and you're like, well, this is weird.
Well,
like,
I think in as close to what others experience as far as sexism as you can get.
You know what? That's a good question, though. Have you ever found yourself in that position where you were sexually being, like, I don't know, I guess taken advantage of, or sexually put in a corner?
Well, okay. I wouldn't phrase it like that. I did. This is many years ago, but where I was traveling for something for work, and there was a individual who, I'm trying to think how to phrase this properly, because I do think it's just a sexist presumption that this individual, a female who was there, had this assumption that I would not mind the physical contact as heavy as it was, simply because I was a man and she was an attractive woman. Right?
Oh yeah,
which is, I think, a variation of what you're talking about. And the thing about me is, I don't like to touch anybody, so I'm just like, no,
yeah,
back up. I'm not, And
I don't know you. Also, we don't have a history. We're not friends.
There's also a byproduct of that, because this was a California thing, and Californians hug and they drape themselves over. Oh. It's fucking weird, man. I'll never get used to that. So I think that compounded it.
I had two people who tried to pressure me into a threesome. It was years ago. But it's a funny story, and it's it was a friend of mine who had no taste in women, and this is important, right? Awful taste in women.
Okay. Oh,
I think you've heard this. And,
I think I am anticipating where this is going, but I'm curious.
Yeah, and so he had this friend she was like the worst kind of hippie. She was slightly older than us, and she was like, she was, for lack of a better phrase, she was a dirty hippie, right? She had like bad dreads, and she was overweight, and she was like, you think like classic dirty hippie from like the 90s, like tie-dye dress, Birkenstocks,
Man, I just am waiting to see what the framework of this is, because
No. So like we were all hanging out, right? At my friend's house, and like they and here's the thing. It's very clear. I did not have a car, right? And so if I was going to leave, I was going to have to walk basically across my town at this point, right? And this is I think this is pre-cell phones. It's pre-cell phones, yeah. So this is like early college, early college. And my friend knew that I was like a wild and crazy guy, right? And the two of them started getting into it with each other. And I was just sitting there. And what's funny is that I wouldn't have cared if the two of them had gone at it while I was in the room. Yeah. It's that she was then very insistent that I join in. And then he was very insistent that I join in. And I was like, you know what, guys? I was like, it's really late. And I got to go. I was like, I got stuff to do in the morning. And my friend was like, well, I'm not going to leave to drive you, man. I was like, I'm like, no, it's totally cool. You guys keep doing what you're doing. And I left there and was just like, oh God, I was never, ever, ever going to happen. And I walked home. No. See, I wouldn't play that music. It was a fucking victory, man.
No. I'm talking about for them.
Yeah. And the thing is, the next day he was so like, hey man, he's like, I can't believe you didn't go for that. It was so cool. I mean, we both could have like jumped on. I'm like, no, I'm good. It's like yeah. And what's hilarious is that like I've heard, I'm not the only person who's been in a situation like that.
Oh no, I've heard of scenarios exactly.
Yeah,
like that.
I have a friend, a woman who opened her. So she liked to fuck around, and her husband at the time, who was very much trying to like roll with, was like, let's have an open marriage. And she's like, that's fine, that's cool. So then he used to bring couples back to like have like a thing, and she used to basically like walk out. And she said to me that it wasn't because she wasn't interested in the act. She's like, he has horrible taste. She's like, and I know I shouldn't complain because he married me. She's like, but like his standards are so much lower than mine. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, I understand that. Because there's a lot of guys out there that I grew up with.
That makes complete sense to me.
Whose standards was like, does she have a pulse and a vagina? Well, I'm good to go, Like,
and the pulse is optional, let's be honest.
Well, it depends on how long she's been dead, right? Yeah. Right. So yeah, she would regularly have to be like, no. And then she had to set ground rules where she was like, send pictures. She's like, before you bring anyone home, it's like, you send me pictures. She's like, so that I can give you like a because like, let's not make this awkward.
Yeah. Let's not have it in the room where I do a thumbs down gladiator style, and you have to like escort the person crying out of the room. Like
the Coliseum, where you're just like, no, this.
I mean, that would be kind of funny, but you don't want to be doing that.
No, it's funny when you hear about it. It's not funny to be
there. In it. Yeah.
And yes, but being in that situation, I can understand how in the original situation with the no, I'm not having a threesome. I can understand that if you were somebody who had some kind of like social guilt or social pressure, you might be like, but I have to take part. Whereas I was like, no.
Oh, I could see people getting pressure to that. Yeah, I'm sure it's happened many times.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't understand.
The sad part is, I'm sure it's happened many times to women by a couple of guys.
Oh yeah.
Which is and sickening, but I'm sure it's happened many times.
But yeah, I just and the thing is, I think because I have such a I have my tastes and I trust them. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the most confident guy, but I trust what I like and what I don't like. I trust that in, like they're in that force.
Whenever there is any doubt, there is no doubt.
Well, yeah. If you don't like something, that's just what it is. Go with it.
Sure. Well,
don't sit there and go, well, maybe eventually I'll like it. No. If you don't like it, that's it. You don't like it.
Yeah.
If you do like it, then if anyone tells you otherwise, tell them to fuck off. Listen, if she'd been, honestly, if she'd even been a nicer person, I think that's really the problem in this situation was that there are people I've been with in my life who were not like the most attractive people, but they themselves were such beautiful. Physically, but they were such beautiful people that it was a joy to be with them. Do you know what I mean?
The interior triumphed over the exterior. I get it.
Yeah, they were hilariously fun to be with. In this situation, it was neither one or the other. And I just needed to extricate myself as quickly as possible. Yeah. But it's that thing. I could sense that idea that if you don't have the willpower or the wherewithal to be like, this is not what I want, you know, you might absolutely. I've never been in a situation like yours though, where that was in a work environment, right?
Well, it was okay. It was not in the work environment. It was basically a conference. So it was.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but it was
but the situation was outside. Well, it was people who were at the conference, which is an infamous scenario for people.
Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
Jesus.
So no. Because if it was something work related, I would have gone to HR. No, that's a different thing.
But I understand what you mean.
Something's wrong here. No, this was just that people were at it. Not a person in the same company, nothing, just somebody who was in the same conference.
Yeah, and conferences, I always like teaching conferences. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about teaching conferences.
Oh, yeah, any conference, honestly.
All these like elementary school teachers come together, and then you hear some horror story, and you're like, what?
Sure.
It was like elementary school teachers?
No, anybody. It's like the whole whatever happens in Vegas stays there thing. For
and
that's
what it is. Seems to be the tack that a lot of people take, and I'm just like,
God. Okay. Let me tell you something. I knew people. I've worked with people who were eager to go to conferences, not for the conference, but because it was a cheating opportunity, or they just thought they would score. I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a thing. I'm very happy. I've never liked traveling, and I don't want to go to conferences because I have no interest.
Oh, I don't think it's good that you don't like traveling. Traveling is fun.
Well, that's what I'm saying, this type of thing, where people are like, I'm just going to be happy to be gone from my wife for a week. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I never understood that. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Like, I have to travel now to get my tattoos, which is sad. But, like, I really like my tattoos. We're buddies.
Well, no. But not that.
But it's annoying that I have to, like, travel up there and that I'm away from, like, my family, my kids, and, like, yeah, I like to be around them. It's fun. I do like to be around my tattoos. We have a great time, too. Plus, my oldest is still in Vermont, so I get to see her. It's great. But I don't like to be away.
By the way, you reminded me of something for the advertising thing. Watch this ad. And I want to see if you pick up on something that's strange. This is a 2024, I'm just going to tell people, it's a 2024 Toyota ad that plays very frequently during baseball games. And my wife and I both noticed something odd about it that just seems strange, but maybe not.
Is this one photographing people looking for?
Yeah, with cameras. Yeah.
I don't. What am I looking for here?
I want to see if you notice anything. Just watch the whole commercial. It's like
I did. I just watched it.
Okay, they're all using non-branded analog cameras, just in different types, but they're all film cameras.
She's the only one with a camera.
Oh, they didn't. Oh, then this is the short. Damn it! This is the short version.
Yeah.
I didn't.
But it doesn't. But it doesn't matter. I see what you mean. She's holding a.
Yeah.
Like
throughout
old,
that ad
yeah.
is different. All different people in different places, and each of them is using a different variation on an analog camera. There's a disposable camera, clearly a Fuji, but with no Fuji name on it. There's the one she's using.
No, I have an honest explanation for that.
Yeah, what is it? Is it just the retro hipster thing? Is that what that's supposed to be?
No. Hold on one second. I'm gonna test this really quick just to make sure that it works. Hold on.
Yeah. I just found it very weird.
Okay, so when you go to iMessage somebody on the iPhone, right? And you type in camera and a little image pops up.
Yeah.
It's an old style camera. They're using the iconographic memory. They're saying that essentially, this is your everyday like idea of what a camera is.
Which is baffling because would young people even know what that is?
Yes, they do. Oh, they do because it's like it's a stereotype. It's an icon. It's not what you actually use. I mean, nobody uses a phone. Everybody uses their phone now. But it'd be weird to have a bunch of people. Eventually we'll get to that point where people are walking around with their iPhones, taking photos. But in the case of this, whoever's I honestly, I wonder if it was somebody who was older directing this. Thought,
well, that's
cameras.
because specifically too, there's a camera that looks a lot like the camera I used when we went to Italy, which was a panoramic film.
Oh yeah, no, these look like old, like this looks like the woman she's holding like a Leica or something like that.
Yeah, or a Nikon or something. Yeah. So she's she's got the biggest one, but then there's one that's like one of the ones, because mine, if you remember, I don't know if you remember, it was a little silver camera and you pulled it open and that was it basically hit itself. Then there's again the disposable, which even makes the click, like when you wind it and that click, like they got the sound perfectly. They got it perfectly. And then the fourth one was, God, I recognize the fourth one too, but they are absolutely old film cameras. And what's funny is they almost seem to get cheaper as the commercial went on, because her camera's nice. That's a nice camera. And then the very last one was the Fuji disposable, like $5, $10 wedding camera. It was even green with it was green and black, just like they are. It was astonishing to me. So, okay, I guess that's what it is, because I couldn't figure it out.
No, it's just
I was sitting here going, did Toyota buy all these camera companies and I didn't hear about it?
It's just this image of a camera. It's
weird to me.
It automatically makes you think camera. I mean, the whole impetus of the ad seems kind of silly, but either way.
Well, but basically, it's you take a Toyota to all these summer travel places, so the beach or whatever, and that's the idea of it. But it's like I said, I was just really stunned because I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, I know what all these cameras are, and they're correct, except they've removed the branding. Because like I said, the Kodak or Fuji cameras, I mean, they say it right on it. That's the whole thing. And
you know what?
Not there.
I'm getting there. I'm getting to that point in my life where I like to not have labels on anything, like brand labels. I will not accept brand labels on the outside of my clothes unless at this point there's something I can't get rid of. But if I see a shirt that's got like a big brand name going down the sleeve or something like that, I won't buy it. Like I got a hat and it had a Patagonia thing on the front and I cut it right out. I just ripped it the patch out. Like I do not want to be free advertising for anybody at this point, unless I specifically want to advertise for them.
I don't care that much. I do. Like I have NASA stickers and everything because I like NASA. So I'll
but that's fine. But here's the thing. You support NASA, right?
Yeah.
You're not putting random Nike stickers everywhere, are you?
Oh no, but like Canon, I like Canon cameras, so. But
the thing, you are
branding.
supporting things.
So you mean if you happen to like the shirt, but you don't like the company, but it's all over their thing, you won't buy it?
Yeah, like It's
I'm with you there. Oh, absolutely no. I think that's just normal.
Yeah, I think we should all only advertise the things that we actually support.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Rather than just be like, well, I got this shirt and it was pretty cheap, and you're like, yeah, but it's like a giant Nike up the side of it, or like Columbia does this, where like they have. They'll write their name down. Like that was a pair of sweatpants that says Columbia down the side. And I'm like, dude, I don't even want to wear those to work out. I was like, I find that obnoxious. Yeah. So, anyhow, I should get to this review.
Where our preamble is now over at 36 minutes. Would you like to start talking about some of the things you have?
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, so one of them was a commercial, right? One of them.
I actually worked my ass off today because I wanted to get this book done so that I could talk about it today. I've been trying to get through it, and it raises a lot of questions, which is why I want to bring it up. So I picked up the X-Men X of Swords collection.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is about, how many pages is this? Does it say? This is like a Bible. It's huge, right? And it's huge because the X of Swords event in the X-Men books happened across multiple titles, right? So like
now, did you read House of 10 and Powers of 10?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. I've read the original. Yeah.
All right. I want to make sure because you need to know that's a big part of it before you go into 10 of Swords.
And it's very funny you should say that because that idea comes up. So for those who don't know, House of X, Powers of X was a event in the X-Men universe that just completely changed how things were.
By the way, you're supposed to say 10. Because it's Moira's, what do you call it?
I know that, but everyone calls it House of X, Powers of X.
I'm just saying, I'm saying that because
I know that it's
the
supposed
number
to be
10 is actually both important and also fits in with the brand.
Oh yeah,
so it's actually very clever.
So it completely changed the world of X-Men, where after this, suddenly all mutants had a country, which was the country of Krakoa, which is the sentient island. And
it was from the
Professor
very first,
X,
the new X-Men launch way back. That was Krakoa was the first enemy they fought.
Yep, and Professor X put on the Super Cerebro helmet, which he has on all the time, and everybody is somewhat connected now by him. And what's weird about that book is it got a little bit weird in the beginning. Like when they first did this, it was a bit like everyone. It was too Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? There was a part of me that was like, oh, how is this gonna go south? Because like everybody was acting really weird. Like Cyclops, Wolverine was happy. Like.
Yeah, that's not supposed to be.
It was really strange. But
I will say, but they were very, very clear in giving you visual cues that, okay, things are not right here. You know, basically seeing Professor X always walking around with that helmet on in black.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Magneto being in white. And
Magneto's all in white.
Yeah, so they were smart to you know, if you're into visuals and visual storytelling, you were picking up things right away.
Yeah, and the thing is, and they brought everybody in, and they created this kind of council seat for mutants, which is essentially like Apocalypse is there, Mr. Sinister's there, but you also have Professor X.
So
Magneto,
wild that those characters, if you grew up with them as enemies, are all there.
Yeah, it gets even weirder. So that's the original book, which anybody should read. That is one of the better X-Men books that have come out for years. But the problem was that after, I guess Marvel realized that they had done something really great, and so after that, they really tried to capitalize that. So there was a lot of stories that came out all of a sudden, right? I just punched my mic by accident there. I don't know if you heard that.
I heard something.
Yes, that was me just glancingly blowing the mic. Sure. So I've been waiting though for these collected editions because there's so many titles that came out because it affected every mutant title, right? And I have been curious because, like I said, things get creepy. Like the X-Men, the mutants of Krakoa can no longer die because essentially Professor X uses Cerebro to take a copy of your mind. So if you die, they basically use that psychic imprint to make a new version of you. So no X-Men really die, except everybody's died. That's the fascinating thing about this, because at one point in this book, X of Swords, somebody's like, they're like, yeah, it's a clone. They're like, to us, this person died, but this person doesn't know he died. And it's pretty hard to argue with someone who says, no, I'm alive. He goes, and with time, you forget.
Right.
But the reality is like Professor X hasn't created immortality. He's just figured out a way that he has all his mutants accessible. Because you always lose, because the thing is, it's kind of like the stacks in Altered Carbon. It can only back up so much. So he backs everybody up at a certain time. So if you die after that backup, you're going to lose whatever number of days. It will never be a complete picture of what happened to you up to your death. So he's got immortal mutants of a sort, and they are giving all this advanced technology they've got to. They're drip kind of selling it to humanity to basically say, hey, you need us, we don't need you. So now governments are off their back because they want their medicines and their technology. So it's a really weird place for X-Men to be after being hated and feared for so long and hiding and all this, kind of the natural storyline of, we have to help humans, but we're afraid of them because, this and Sentinels and that. Right? So great book. So when I finally found they'd collected X of Swords, I was curious to see if things got shitty. Now, I gotta tell you that things have gotten weird. But something that I noted, which is why it was very interesting that you said, well, have you read House of X, Powers of X?
Yeah.
I feel like as much as I enjoy this, and I do enjoy it, I feel that they're having the Marvel movie problem, which is that their backstories have gotten even worse than any other title. I feel like the X-Men universe has gotten there's so much backstory and they're so overloaded that I don't think there's any way for anybody to be able to be up to date enough on what the fuck's going on. Because you know what? I didn't know that Storm and Black Panther had broken up.
Yeah.
I didn't know why. I didn't know why he was so pissed at her. I knew that they were married, and it's just not an area that I was in. But because Storm is now very important in this title, I was like, well, now I'm sitting there going, well, what did I miss? And there's so many titles and there's so much stuff going on Some people are in so many different titles. Like, for one, did they split Psylocke and
Yes. Yes,
okay.
they basically have made, and I think this was their attempt to try to manage the fact that that a lot of people have a problem with Psylocke in the modern day, which makes sense. And so what they wanted to do was they understood that Ninja Psylocke is hot and popular, but problematic. And so they were like, well, can we have our cake and eat it too? And they were like, it's psychic. Sure you can. Why not?
Yeah, so they separated it.
Whatever.
So there is a...
Which, by the way, there is a precedent for in X-Men because you had Madeline Pryor and Jean Grey, so it's not
let's be clear. There's a precedent for everything in X-Men.
No, I know, but it is...
sorts of weird shits happen.
It is more natural than, let's say, if Captain America got split because they've done this in X-Men many times.
Yeah, and that's honestly what makes X-Men now so fun. The fact that it is bordering on the bizarrely absurd.
Well, yeah, you can
anything's
do
possible.
This kind of weirdness, and nobody really blinks at it.
No. So I just didn't realize that had happened. So I saw Psylocke at one point, and then later on I saw, what's her name? It's
Betsy Braddock.
It's, Betsy Braddock. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, there's two of them. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So that said, I do that is both a pro and a con, I think, of the X-Men titles. The fact that there's so much backstory now that I don't think, if you've read all this shit, you have all this headcanon. So when you're reading some of these characters, I think you infer a lot that maybe even the writer doesn't put there, right? So in that respect, but they do try to allude to the history. So when you read these things, it's very heavy if you are someone like me or you who've read a lot of these titles. Whereas I worry that if you're someone coming into this cold, you're going to be sitting there going, what the fuck is going on? Who the hell are these people? What the like, they demand a lot. Like at one point in this book, a Wolverine is looking for a sword, and he finds a Silver Samurai to ask him where this sword master is. And they don't give you much of an explanation for why Silver Samurai and Wolverine don't get along. And then they proceeded to have this big fuck off fight. And like, I know why they hate each other, but you're reading it and you're like, okay, you're missing a few narrative boxes here, giving me like the fucking, even the high, you're not giving me the highlights of the history for why these people hate each other. You're just like, oh, Silver Samurai, fuck you. And he's like, Wolverine, suck my dick and my sword. And you're like, okay, these two don't like each other. That's fine. So either way, I just realized that is kind of a pro and a con of the X-Men, which is that if you love X-Men and you've read it all, they still kind of allude to all the history, which is great. But at the same time, there's so many characters and there's so much going on that you can get lost, right? I suppose this is what Wikipedia is for, so you can look these things up.
True, yes. So
I, by and large, enjoyed X of Swords, but it is a weaker book than Powers of X, House of X. It is weaker mainly because it is inconsistent in its thematically, right? So do you know anything about X of Swords?
Yeah, I know the broad overview. I haven't read it because I really felt like... I honestly felt like they should have just ended that whole thing with Powers of 10. I like the idea
but
of
you
where
knew
that
they
ended.
weren't.
No, and that's the shame of it, is if they had just ended it there. Because when you said, okay, everything was really too hunky-dory and everybody was too... That can't be the X-Men. They can't be happy.
I think to some degree that's what this tests. So
yeah.
The whole idea with this is, so there is a multiverse in the Marvel universe, right?
TNG must eventually become DS9. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, the X-Men have become very plugged into that because Captain Britain is basically protecting the Isle of Avalon, right? And then there's multiple other dimensions that kind of bridge, right? So the whole idea of this book is that essentially there was another universe where there were mutants, and there was a horde that tried to take over. And when this horde happened, things were split, and Apocalypse came to Earth with mutants and Krakoa, right? And left the other half of Krakoa behind, which is Arakoa, right? And left his wife and his children behind to essentially fight this war. And the idea is that he was going to try and build a better mutant kind that was preparing for the inevitability that they one day may need to fight this fight, right? And physically, he was considered to be the weakest of the bunch, which is an interesting thing, right? His wife is quite fierce. So that's the general, like, kind of just framework of it, right? So you essentially find out that these people have been on the move. The mutants failed, and this army of now, like, kind of hybrid monster mutant people who took over Apocalypse's family, and the Apocalypse family now leads them. So it's like the original Four Horsemen. Like, death is there, and pestilence and all that stuff. And they are steaming their way through the multiverse, taking over worlds and universes. And they know that Earth is there, and they want to get there. And at the center of all this, there is this, and this is where things get a little weird. So at the center of all this, there is this priestess. She's a wizard. She's essentially a wizard. What is her name exactly? Because I kept calling her Selenite because it looks a lot like the Selenite from Baldur's Gate. The fuck is her name exactly?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because I saw the name and I kept.
Not Spiral.
No, she's Saturnine.
Oh, Saturnine. Yeah, okay. I remember Saturnine.
Yeah, so
sure. I
Opal Luna Saturnine. She is the omniversal Magistrix. Magistrix?
Of course she is.
She is the.
Of course she is, dear.
Yeah, she's at the center of all this, and she is essentially a wizard who can alter reality, right? And she can see all the different multiverses and all these different realities that all bridge around her, and she is trying to keep some kind of peace, I guess is what you'll call it, right?
So she's Madame Web, except beyond the Spider-Verse.
She sucks less than that, yeah.
That's a given, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. So she essentially, once they realize everything that's going on, and they realize, she organizes a challenge between the mutant monster forces of Arakoa and Krakoa, which is that, she is prophesizing that there are 10 champions. Was it 10 champions? It's 10 champions. Basically, there's a one group of swordsmen must face another group of swordsmen, right? And everyone kind of has to figure out who they are, and they have to find their respective swords for this big fight that will decide, who gets what. Does Krakoa stand or does Arakoa stand, right? And the thing is that like Magneto and Professor X are like, we should just close these portals. But the funny thing is that Krakoa won't let them. The island wants to be reunited with its other half. So it won't let them close the portal. So the first part of this book is actually really interesting because they're getting into House of X, Power of X has opened this book up to all the weird, like, space sci-fi shit that I find really enjoyable. So the first part of this book is all about these other worlds and the politics and the heroes of Krakoa, them trying to figure out who the swordsmen are and whether they have their swords. And it's very serious because whoever goes, they have figured out that once you leave Earth, our home dimension, and you cross into the other worlds, Professor X's copies don't work. And what ends up happening is when you come back, it's something like, because you're going into the multiverse, he can no longer communicate with the one version of you. And when they go to resurrect you, it's somebody else entirely. It's like an amalgam of all these different variations on what you could have become. Right? So it's not you, and it might not necessarily come back like good. Like the copy can get mutated to the point that they can't even bring you back.
So it's
right?
like the Pantheon version of the Hulk.
No, it's kind of like they may not be able to bring you back at all.
Well, but if they did, you're going to be smushed together.
Well, so they bring back one guy, and he's such a mess that he can't even his body basically falls apart because he can't even sustain himself. Yeah. So essentially, if you go to the other world and you die, that you might actually just be dead, There's no bringing you back, right? So I like the fact that they found a way around the immortality. They were like, hey, listen, if you stay here, you live. But if you don't go and you fight, they may come through the portal anyway. You know what I mean? So I like that they've created this kind of situation where it's like, no. You don't get to just go fight, die, and come back right away. It's like if you die, you may really die. So then, and it's very serious. Apocalypse has realized that world that he was part of has completely failed, and he's very serious about being part of this. And he has an early run-in with these other people who are like him, and they nearly kill him. They infect him with a virus that nearly kills his ass, which is to say that they are better at this than he is. And I like that. Apocalypse is never on sure footing through most of this book, which I love. Like, Apocalypse can be a really interesting character when they allow him to be. And I always like
terminally boring when he always seems to be one step ahead of everything. Exactly.
And in this book, he's not. Like, he knows a lot, but he's not one step ahead because he left. He has no idea what's going on. And all he knows is that, his wife basically was asked to fight the head of this other group, and that she lost. And that it's like this golden masked creature, and the golden masked creature is what leads the forces of Arakoa. And he's essentially fighting his children. I mean, it is quite fucked up for Apocalypse, but it makes him interesting, right? So they have to find their heroes. They have to figure out who it's going to be. And this part of the book is actually really good because it goes across these different titles, and it's about all these people facing up the fact that they have immortality. They're happy, but if they don't fight, it all may be lost. So, like, for example, Wolverine, they do a few issues with him where it's him trying to find. So he needs to get a sword, and it's by the guy who kind of made him his first sword. And he finds out that essentially this guy is in hell, that he has been brought down to hell by one of the demons, and that the hand.
Oh, is that the Japanese guy, Ozone, or whatever his name was?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
oh, wow.
and essentially he has to go down to hell to find this guy.
Didn't he kill that guy? I thought he dueled that guy and killed him.
No, then it must be another guy. This guy's
okay.
Yeah. So either way, but what's great about the Wolverine storyline is that he's essentially walking around going, "I'm happy. I'm happy with this place. I'm happy with where I live." He goes, "I don't want to have to do this." He's like, "But I have to protect this." He's like, "It's worth dying for." And so it's kind of like a position you've never. And Wolverine is not the lead. Another thing I love about this book is that Wolverine is present, but he's not the show. He has plenty of like cool moments, but he's not the end all be all in this book. And I like that. The fact that they give everybody time. There's a lot of characters in this book, almost too many. But everybody gets a little bit of time to shine. And I do like the way they handle Wolverine, where he realizes that this is worth fighting for. And he has to give it up to protect it, knowing that he might not get back. And that's the story you get with a lot of people. So like Cypher gets chosen. Cypher from the New Mutants. And he's not a fighter. His position on Krakoa is that he's the only person who can talk to the island. Like, he is the voice of Krakoa, and the island doesn't want him to go either.
Well, that's because Cypher's power was speaking any language, anytime.
Exactly. Anywhere. So he doesn't want to leave. And his sword is Warlock, which I thought was a really interesting little touch. That the weapon he is supposed to wield is Warlock. So they have to meld for him to go through.
Oh, so Warlock's alive.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Again, yeah. That's the thing. There's so many people who are alive or different, and this is the weird. Like Cable. Cable is a kid. He's like a 20-year-old in this.
Yeah.
And like he's calling Wolverine, Cyclops' dad, and Jean Grey's mom, and he's running around with them.
Sure,
and he's like, "Gee, Dad, I don't want to let you down." And
yeah,
like it's young, young Cable, which is weird. But essentially, you have all these heroes, and they're looking for their swords. And what do you call it? So Cypher wants to go because he's not a fighter, but he doesn't want to send somebody else to die for him. Right. And there is a prophecy. So like these people they're not choosing. It's just that everybody's realizing, who the prophecies are about. Right. So that whole part of the book is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. You are off with a lot of different people. Apocalypse finds his sword to go through, and young Cable ends up going, and he has this kind of weird power sword, and there's a few people that I don't even know. There's like some sort of blind samurai named Gorgon or something like that, who's supposedly really, really old. This is the problem of there being so many characters that like I don't even know everybody anymore, right? And they and right up into the moment that they go through the portal, it is a really great book. I really did enjoy it. They challenged the idea of the island and immortality, and the council is having a lot of trouble because they can't control Krakoa, and they know that this is something that could destroy their world as we know it, and yet Professor X has a really hard time. Now that his people don't die, he has a really hard time sending people to their possible death. So it's interesting because now that he doesn't have to do that anymore, he doesn't want to do it. So like I love all this stuff they've got going on. And the other side picks their people. They pick various people from their world to come through, who are all kind of interesting characters with interesting power sets. And they all have to stand on this kind of sigil with their swords, and they have essentially come through this portal. Now, like I said, up to that moment is good. When they get there, she has them all come to a dinner where they all must meet before the challenges the next day. And we're doing pretty good up to this. But thematically, the book changes. And this is kind of the weakness of the book. The beginning of the book is very serious and very kind of intense and fascinating. But the second they get to the wizard lady's palace, the tone changes. And like one of the books that they cut to is a book. Have you ever read Hellions? You know what Hellions is?
Oh yeah, yes.
It's Sinestro's team.
Yep.
Yeah. So Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister's team. Sorry.
I know who.
Mr. Sinister is a fucking.
Sinestro's team are the Yellow Lanterns, but I know.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is fucking nuts, right? And I think that thing is that once they cut so Mr. Sinister basically has a great idea of why don't we go through the portal and steal their swords, so they can't fight, right? And it's this whole subplot that essentially he gets himself accidentally votes himself into being the leader of his team and having to find a back way into Arakoa to steal their swords. It doesn't work, of course. By the time they get there, the Arakoans have left, and most of his team is killed. But what's fascinating is that when he's about to do this, he goes to his secret chamber where you find out that he has a whole backlog of clones, right? And rather than go, he basically pulls out one of his clones and says, "Hey, you go." And the clone's like, "I don't want to go. You go." And he's like, No. I brought you out because you're going to go. And he's like, "Yeah, but we're the same person." And in the end, they do rock, paper, scissors to decide which of them is going to go. And you have no idea which one went. But that's the whole tone of the Hellions. Like, Mr. Sinister's nuts. He doesn't give a shit about his team. And, like, it's almost kind of played for, like, gory comedy. And that's the thing that comes into the book, is that it gets very weirdly funny while also still trying to be intense and fascinating. So, like, the wizard lady has this party where all our heroes meet their adversaries, and everyone's trying to figure everybody else out, and it turns into like a weird dinner party where everybody's trying to figure out everybody else's weaknesses, but they're at a dinner party. But then Wolverine decides, I'm just going to stab the wizard lady and see what happens, and then she basically stops reality around him and shows him what'll happen if she dies, at which point she's like, "You're on my bad side, you're going to pay for that." It's just really weird. And there's a whole subplot where the wizard lady, really what she wants is Captain Britain, the actual Captain Britain. What's his name? Braddock. This is first. Jamie Braddock?
Brian. No, Brian Braddock.
Brian Braddock. Yeah, Jamie Braddock is the king now, the crazy king of Avalon.
Yeah.
So there's a whole subplot where like, did you hear that?
What the hell was that?
That was my son saying goodnight.
Oh, I heard something, but I didn't hear it
Yeah,
clearly.
exactly. So yeah, there's a whole crazy subplot where she really wants Brian Braddock to be her lover, but he refuses to do it, and she desperately wants him. And at one point in the dinner party, Wolverine is like, he's like, Braddock, if you just did the right thing, he's like, none of this, no one would have to die. He's like, you're being really selfish. And he's like, excuse me, I'm married. And Wolverine's like, I've been married before. He's like, and there's a lot of people here who have never been married who won't get the opportunity. He's like, come on. He's like, man up. And I'm like, it's just a weird vibe. And once the trials actually begin, they just get weirder and weirder. So I thought that there was going to be I thought it was going to be a team battle, or they're going to be like actual sword fighting duels. No, they just get weird, and she starts giving points out for all kinds of weird shit. So the first fight is a sword fight. But then after that, what's his name? Cypher gets challenged to marry someone from the other team. And you're like, what? And not only that, he's challenged this big woman who's very much like a masked big Barda. He can't speak her language. And he's like, what, I have to marry her? And they were like, well, it's that or you have to fight her. And he's like, well, I'll do this instead. And the wizard basically says, well, this is its own challenge, isn't it? But he's so fascinated that he can't speak her language that he actually becomes enthralled with her, and they get married. And you're like, what the fuck is going on here? And Wolverine has a fight with a guy. It's a challenge of the fight to the death in some hell dimension, and when he kills the guy dies, but Wolverine loses, and he's like, what the fuck is this? And she goes, it was a challenge to the death. She's like, whoever died first wins. And he's like, oh, fuck you. And so none of the challenges make sense, and the points just keep ranking up for the Arakoa side. It gets weird. At one point, did you know Jubilee has a child that's a dragon?
I read something about it. I don't know any of the details, but I read something about it. Yeah.
Shocked the hell out of me. She shows up and she's like, that's my baby. And I'm like, that is a big fucking dragon. Holy shit. Okay. So yeah, there's all kinds of, it's weird. And then on top of that, there's a whole lot of weird shit that I wasn't kind of read up on. So it's just whoa. So it's, once you get to this part of the book, it gets weird. And there is still these really fascinating bits in there, because the leader of the Arakoa, this gold masked creature, takes off its helmet, and you realize that it's Apocalypse's wife, who he thought was dead. And he's like, I thought you lost. She's like, I did lose. She goes, I killed the original leader of Arakoa, and when you defeat the mask, you then must wear it. And when you wear the mask, it takes over your mind. But if no one wears the mask, the hordes of Arakoa will not be restrained. They will run wild, and they will just destroy everything. So you are forced to wear the helmet, because even though it turns you into a bad guy, it still gives you this one little bit of holding them back. So now Apocalypse is in a pickle because he's found out the person he's fighting is his own wife. And the duels just keep getting weirder and fucking weirder, where Wolverine has to, at one point he has to go against his own team. Him and Storm have a drinking match. It just gets fucking weird, and it loses a lot of its own intensity, right? I don't know what they were going for with this. But then the weird part is it picks it back up, because Cable loses this match and almost dies, and manages to psychically contact his parents and be like, hey, we're losing. This is really bad. And Cyclops and Jean Grey are like, well, if you guys are losing and we're going to get fucked anyway, then we might as well basically just storm the castle. And they go to the Krakoa fucking council, the silent council, and basically say, hey, we're going to storm through and we're going. and Magneto and Professor X are like, well, we can't support you. Like, this is not what we do. And Cyclops is like, well, that's fine. He's like, I'm going. He's like, my son is over there. He goes, and I'm not losing him. He's like, so if I die forever, so be it. I'm not staying. And they basically put out a call for anybody who wants to fight can come with them. So the book picks up speed because they get towards the end of this battle, and Krakoa wins, I guess, or Arakoa wins, and but I can't remember, what is it? For some reason, it's not enough. Like, it was always a cover for them to basically storm the castle and destroy the wizard lady anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it was always kind of like a cover for them just to get close. They didn't care if they won or lost. They were going to fucking attack anyway. So, like, suddenly they're overwhelmed. And at that point, Cyclops shows up through a portal with like 500 X-Men. That's what it looks like. There's literally X-Men falling from the sky at one point in the book. And then it gets really intense again because you're not really sure how it's going to go. People are like real dying left and right. And what's left of the people who are in the original duel are desperately trying not to die. And it comes down to Apocalypse fighting his wife. And what's fascinating is that he manages to defeat her, which means he takes the golden helm. But he has to wear the golden helm. And his wife says to him, she's like, you won't be able to resist it. She's like, if you wear that helmet, she's like, you won't resist it. She was like, you were always the weak one. And what you realize is that physically, he was always weaker than his wife. But mentally, he's not. And he puts the helm on, and when he puts the golden helm on, the helm's like trying to control him. And he says, the mistake you're making is that I'm not trying to win. He goes, the way you've controlled everybody before is that they want to win. And then you basically hijack that into we're going to destroy everything. He's like, I don't want to win. He goes, all I want to do is to protect my people. He's like, so, and it's almost kind of like philosophically, the mask can't fight that. And he overwhelms it, which means that he stops the forces of Arakoa, at which point the wizard lady steps in and says, hey, you help me. I'm going to help you. And she pulls the mask from his head and she turns it into a scepter, essentially. As she puts it, it will still have a pull on you, but it cannot mentally control you the way the mask would have. And in that moment, you realize it's over. They've beaten Arakoa. Apocalypse is in control. And Apocalypse is happy to go back to their world because he's found his wife. He's gotten her back. And that's what he's wanted through. And he talks about her through the whole book. So Apocalypse gets to go back to this other world and be with her. And I mean, I don't understand how he could be with his kids because they did want to murder his ass. But he stays in that world, and the X-Men take their fallen and return to Krakoa. And they had essentially the wizard lady says somebody has to from each side has to stay with the other as kind of like a peace sanction. And so Apocalypse stays because he's from the other world, and they ask for Arakoa. So basically, Krakoa gets to reunite with its other half back in the real world, and Apocalypse gets to reunite with his family. And that's kind of how the book ends. And it's just very weird because the end gets very intense and weird and sci-fi, high epic fantasy, right? But there's this whole middle section of the book where I'm like, what the hell am I reading? And like, at times it's like kind of funny, and fun and weird. And there still are fascinating elements, but it completely loses its tone just to kind of collect it all and come right back at the end. So it's a great beginning and end with a kind of a weird middle, like you're reading somebody else's book. And I wonder if it's just an inconsistency of writing where this is spanning across so many different issues that, like, depending on whose book it is you're reading, what script they were given to have to get into their own stuff. You know what I mean? So like it could have just been weak writers on the middle, but then they had other writers who were very strong. I mean, yeah, it's just weird. Like, one of the challenges is like a race. And another challenge is like a fucking, like I said, there's a drinking match, and one, like I said, the one guys get married, and yeah, it's just it's just weird. It's just very weird in the middle. I'm trying to get to the page where I can see if I can find it, so I can tell you what some of these fucked up duels were like. Like at one point, Magic is there, and she has an arm wrestling match with a fucking crocodile guy, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? But then all of a sudden there is a sword fight, and you're like, okay, so there are some sword fights, and there aren't other sword fights, and the wizard says at one point, you presumed that this was all going to be sword fights because you needed swords. She's like, you're presuming that the swords were weaponry. She goes, the swords were keys to get you through the gate. And I was like, okay, I understand that. It's just got a weak middle. So I don't know. Thoughts, feelings?
Well, like I said, I kind of was not. I never planned to read the follow-up. I thought that the original, I mean, now they've combined them into, but originally the two different miniseries, I felt like that was enough. I sort of knew that they were going to follow it up because it was too popular.
It was too big, yeah.
And, it was one of those things, and I had a hunch that if they did, it would ruin it. So
see, and here's the thing. I don't think this ruined it.
No, but you know what? It's not. I can tell just by the way you're saying it. It's too disjointed. It's too disheveled. It doesn't feel like it has the unified vision that the first two did.
And that's the thing. That book, Powers of X, House of X, is a stellar book.
And that's the thing. I'd rather end on a high note and not.
But
read
the thing
a
is,
watered down version.
The world that produces is now what the X-Men titles have to be written in.
Yeah, and
right?
I'm okay. Not. They'll collapse that at some point. So
they will. Oh, they absolutely will. But it is a fascinating world for them to have to play through, because usually, like, they were hiding out in the mansion, and shit was, mutants were on the run, and shit was bad, and whereas this is like, no, this is them from a place of power. They've got their own world. They've got their own island. They're a political power in the world. People are happy. And then this whole other storyline happens. And I like it because, like I said, it's very epic, high fantasy sci-fi. I enjoy that. I like the fact that there's magic next to technology. There's all kinds of weird shit. And like I said, the first part of the book, I separate this book into three pieces, which is essentially the drawing of the swordsman, the duels, and then the finale. The finale is great. The drawing of the swordsman is great. But the duels in the middle, it just gets weird and inconsistent. And there are still things in there that I found really enjoyable. Yeah. There are elements there are really, I mean, honestly, the whole thing was where Cypher marries the alien woman. Like, as absurd as it sounds, I thought it was really well done. Sure. Like, because at first he to the whole beginning of the book, he's kind of horrified that he's not going to be able to be a swordsman. But when he goes through and realizes that it's not about being a swordsman, it's actually about the things that challenge you, right? For him, the challenge is basically trusting in somebody that he can't communicate with. Yeah. And the other woman, the alien when he ends up marrying, it's about this challenge of loving something that you don't understand. So like, it's actually really well done. And then as the story goes on, they handle it really well. Like that weird storyline where she essentially turns against them to be with him, but then he has to try and communicate to her the fact that he can't leave them, that he doesn't want anything to happen to her, but they won't hurt her. If she joins them, they will take care of her, where if he goes with them, they will kill him. So it's actually really well done, as absurd as it is. So I enjoyed it, and I am willing to read other books, because I can't. What came after X of Swords? Isn't there some other storyline?
I think so, but like I said, I just kind of stopped paying attention to it. I'll go back and
I'm willing. It was good enough that I'm willing to keep reading stories from this iteration of the X-Men. I am still curious where they can go with this. As for the book itself, strong beginning and end, weak middle. But I worry the fact that X-Men have gotten so weird in the books now that I don't know how they plan.
Oh,
This
they'll
book,
do a reality wipe, or it'll something.
no. But what I'm saying is, X of Swords and the Fox X-Men movies, right, are nothing alike. I mean, yes, they have similar characters with the same names, but like these books are these two versions of the X-Men aren't even in the same universe. Like by the time the X-Men have gotten to here, everything is just so weird and so crazy and so over the place, and like, you've got multiple dimensions and people are riding dragons and there's magic and there's technology and like just all hell is breaking loose. I'm very curious what Marvel movies is, what their plan of delivering the X-Men is going to be, because they've got almost too much to work with, and its current iteration is so weird that I don't like. They can't possibly want to start with like House of X, Powers of X. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're gonna have to make up some other completely new iteration to have it to amalgamate what's going on, to have it make sense, if that's what they plan on doing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said,
either way,
my interest just I stopped after the end of the first two because I felt like it was such it's refreshing and interesting way to take the X-Men that I had a hunch.
Yeah,
that anything that came after it.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to be bad. I was sure there was going to be good stuff, but it wasn't going to be, because that thing was done. Those first two were done with a tight vision. Like you knew who was doing it, and they had complete control, and they were doing their story.
Whereas there's a lot of writers on this,
and that was exactly I was about to ask you, and I said I'm going to wait, and I want to hear what the details are, and I'll know.
The whole Hellions storyline, dude, I wouldn't even have bothered including them in the book. It's so pointless. Unless it's part of like the only thing that happens is that Mr. Sinister captures DNA samples of mutants from Arakoa and then brings them back. That's the only thing, and that you find out he's got a whole house full of clones. Other than that, they show up, they're too late, their team gets mostly wiped. Do you know what I mean? Like, and unless they're keeping it there because it's important for a later story, that's all I got for you. But I absolutely enjoyed reading this because I was very nervous after reading the House of X, Powers of X book that there was going to be like a weird Kool-Aid effect, that people were going to be odd. And what I like about this book is that you get to experience these characters in that world and see them, this new iteration of them that's not creepy. Like Cyclops is not creepy in this book. He got creepy in House of X, Powers of X. Whereas in this book, he's not creepy at all. He's a dad. He's a leader. He still heads up one part of the hero wing of the X people. And when he finds out that his son is in danger, he reacts like a dad, and he basically says, "I'm going." He goes, "I don't care if you're coming with me." He's like, "I'm going." And Nightcrawler is like, "I'll come with you." And he's like, "No." He's like, "You need to stay here on the council. You are the heart of the council. I don't know what'll happen with all these fucking nut jobs if you're not here." And there's that, like I said, and that's in the conclusion. Like I said, the finale of the book is great, but I like seeing these characters in this new world and how they behave, how Wolverine is trying to be Wolverine, but contending with the fact that there's this big part of him that's actually quite happy, and what they're willing to do to fight for that. So I am curious to read on. I'm going to read some reviews to find out if there's any other big titles in the universe, in this version of the X-Men, that's worth reading. But I won't just read one title. Like I won't read like Collected Hellions or Collected this. Like there's a big picture thing going on here, and I'm more interested in that. But it was a blast. Weak middle, great finale. Apocalypse is great when they let him be flawed and interesting. And it is weird also because, like, you remember back in the day, like, Apocalypse is like this big powerhouse villain. When he showed up, it was like, all hell was breaking loose. But now it's like you got a scene where you've got Professor X, and Magneto and Apocalypse, like discussing the fate of mutant kind.
Well, they radically refined Apocalypse after the 90s, I want to say, where they started really making him, you saw his background where he's a human being and, he had more of a human. Yeah, originally he just showed up and he was essentially a what do you call it? Weeding out the weak, and that was his whole character. He was just a big robot man who could shapeshift and wanted to kill weak mutants. That was it.
And that makes a lot of sense with the character in this, because they said that he was always even if he didn't realize why he was doing it, he was always weeding out the weak, because that's what Apocalypse was supposed to do. He was supposed to create a strong mutant race for when this war came. Right,
and that was the thing. Is then later they made it where he was like a natural force, like a Galactus type, and then they made it that no, it was he had his autonomy in what he was doing, but he was getting ready for a great war. I mean, they've they always do, shuffled it around, but they have made Apocalypse into far more than just shape-shifting metal man that he used to be. So he is not just a guy with an A on his belt, They've definitely improved and refined him in a lot of ways. So with him sitting around, that's not unusual now. But if you were to show that to one of us back in the early 90s, it'd be like, that's not Apocalypse. Apocalypse is the guy who comes in and just smashes everything, because that's all he did with him, really.
Yeah, whereas he is fantastic in this book.
Yeah, the idea of Apocalypse having a wife was never before. There was nothing of. I remember a couple times they mentioned he was Egyptian, and that was as much background as he ever got.
Yeah,
they were like, "Oh yeah, his name was this."
Well, that's what I mean. If you see the movie Age of Apocalypse, the way they handle a character in that movie, you're like, "Oh, okay, that's very weak."
If I remember, at one point they were trying to say he was the actual first mutant. I think they retconned that out or something. Yeah. But that was at one point he was the first.
Yeah, one, this gets back to that problem of the weight of your backstory, which is that there's so much backstory to the X-Men, and you never know what of it they're going to hold on to or not when they do like a big retcon. So like Wolverine, who has such a weird sordid history anyway, you're like, is Patch is Patch part of your canon anymore, or is that not part of your? Were you married or you're not?
Real? Yeah, exactly. Is it Old Man Logan? Did he turn into a Wolfman? What?
Yeah, exactly. So all this shit's in there, and I think that it bows under the weight of its own history.
Oh, it does. Well, this is the same complaint we've said about comics in general. As Batman, all of them.
If you can kind of find that narrow middle ground where you like kind of forget about some of it and just accept other weird, like when Jubilee showed up with a big baby dragon, I was like, you know what? I'm so far into this book now, I'm just going with it. That's fine. We're here.
Right.
I'm cool. If I get worked up about this, it's nothing else will make sense. There's a lot of people I don't know. There's a lot of heroes that show up, and I'm like, okay. But you know what? The rest of the X-Men seem to think you're okay, so I'll just accept that you're here, and we'll keep going. And like Psylocke is part of the Hellions now. That was the thing that really screwed me up, is that Psylocke is part of the Hellions, but Betsy Braddock is like, she's Captain Britain.
Well, the original Psylocke, the body that got swapped,
she was a ninja.
Assassin.
She was a ninja assassin.
Yeah. Quanon or something was the name of it. By the way, you know that the whole reason that Psylocke and Betsy Braddock are the same is because one of the writers made a screw up, that they didn't read the notes on this character, and so they accidentally created Psylocke because they hadn't done their research. Have you read any of the backstory of this thing?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so the original character in 93 was called Quanon, and was what Psylocke looks like, and showed up in the X-Men as that character with that name, and then somebody else, different writer, was doing an issue and had that character show up, and it was contradictory, so they made it where Betsy got body swapped into her, and then they just ran with it until they went, oh no, this is too much of an issue, guys. We have to split them back off. And so they basically had Betsy reform her body off the dead spirit of somebody else. And so Psylocke today is the original Quanon as Psylocke. It is hilarious because it's just somebody didn't take their notes correctly. It's the only reason this ever happened.
Well, and it's such an immense canon of work that shit like that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's just funny. That was not really intentional. Yeah. They just decided, well, she's popular this way, more popular than Betsy Braddock, who was kind of a fussy British woman.
And Betsy Braddock is a big part of this book, by the way.
Well, she's Captain Britain now, so
yeah. Like she is one of the heroes. Wait, let me see. What is the?
Well, I mean, she was in Excalibur. Like, I remember that character being around. She was in Fall of the Mutants. She was around before Psylocke and was a big part of all this stuff. and then she just became Psylocke, and it was like, ooh, sexy lady. All right, we're gonna run with that.
Yeah, it's a good read. Now, if you want something that's a little more consistent, I was finally moved to get a subscription to Hulu, which I have put off for a very long time. Because I don't like to have. I know that some people have like every streaming service. I don't like to have that many. I'm usually pretty precise about it because I don't want to spend that much. But there was a detective series that was put on that Hulu did called Shard Lake. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
I read about it, and I was like, you know what? I was like, shit, I really want to watch that. And finally, I got to the point where I was like, fuck it, we're just gonna get a Hulu and power through it. So I watched this series, Shard Lake, and
have you read any of the books or anything?
No, I've never read any of the books.
Right,
no, I didn't know it was a series. I just watched the book.
I didn't know it was books, and then I happened to read a note about it where they said, well, they're old. I mean, they're old books. I don't think they're new at all.
The guy who wrote them just died in like his 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's fascinating about this series, the thing that made me curious, is the guy who is the lead.
Oh, by the way, I'm completely wrong. They were set in olden times. They're actually very contemporary. The first one was in 2003. So I don't know what I'm talking about because I didn't know anything about the books.
Sorry. Oh yeah, I thought you just meant that they'd been out for the last.
No, I thought they were old in books because of the time.
So they are. So to set them up, so the books themselves are about a lawyer in the time of Cromwell in England. And this is the period of history where the church and the state broke separately, and Henry VIII is basically. Being able to divorce wives, and Cromwell is essentially taking the church apart. Is that right? Yeah. So the main guy, Shard Lake, is a detective he's a lawyer, but essentially he gets put in these situations because he works for Cromwell, where he ends up having to be a detective. And so it is a detective series that takes place in the time period of Cromwell. Which is interesting. What made me fascinated about the show is that the lead. So the act. I'm pretty sure that Shard Lake is a hunchback, right? So he has this hunched body, and apparently, oh man, what's his name? Who's the guy who directed the first Thor? What's his name? Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh. Yeah, sure.
Kenneth Branagh apparently thought about buying the rights to these books to make a series because he really liked them. And then he realized that wearing a hunchback harness for many seasons of a show would probably ruin him forever, like posture-wise. So he said, you know what? Instead, I'm going to do this other series that takes place in the modern day, and there's no prosthetics. So that was also interesting to me, the fact that the lead is a hunchbacked lawyer. And then the actor who plays the lead in Shard Lake is an actor who is actually handicapped. He has I don't know what it's called, but he basically has like a twisted right arm, and his hand is kind of twisted around. And he is an actor who, I guess he said that he realized early on that he had to lean into his handicap and really play it like he wasn't weak. And so this guy's done a lot of Shakespeare, and in Shakespeare, he's played a lot of villains. And he plays the villains by basically just leaning into it, being confident. And he found that if you act like your handicap doesn't fucking matter, people kind of just ignore it. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting like mindset, because normally if you're gonna act, people look at the way you look and they judge you, right? What's the guy that we like who played I don't know what we call the little people. What's his name?
Oh,
Dinklage. Peter Dinklage. Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, I was about to say the guy in X-Men who played the Sentinel guy.
Yeah. Peter Dinklage is one of those rare actors who has gotten beyond what is considered his handicap and is just doing roles as a person. Not as a special dwarf person in that role, but just a person in that role. Do you know what I mean? Like his acting is so good, he has defied his physical handicaps, and people ignore them because he is so good. To some degree, that's what's happened here. So this actor is playing this hunchback. Now he is wearing a prosthetic on his shoulder, so he has this kind of like one shoulder's up and the other one's down, and they have used his own handicap to kind of extenuate it a little bit. So there's a very specific look to him where he's got like one shoulder down and his arm is kind of twisted. But I love the way he plays the character, where his problem is that he works for Cromwell, but he is not he's trying to give Cromwell what he wants, which is to shut down these abbeys and these churches and stuff like that Cromwell feels are corrupt, but really Cromwell wants their money. So he wants to shut these edifices down so they can take all the money from the church. But there is essentially one of Cromwell's men from this one show is working this abbey where all these monks are, and trying to figure out what he can come up with that they've done wrong so that he can close them. And while this particular person is there, he is decapitated by somebody. And Cromwell is fucking pissed. By the way, Cromwell is played by Sean Bean, which is excellent. That's the other thing that I was like, oh, Sean Bean is Cromwell? I'll watch this. And Cromwell sends in Shardlake, because as he puts it, he goes, I don't need a battering ram. At this point, I need someone who is a surgeon. And so he sends Shardlake to find who the killer is and to close the church. And sends him along with, I guess, one of his own men, who is he's formerly a poor guy who was elevated by Cromwell's offices and has now become a kind of rags to riches thing, where now he is like Cromwell's man. But he acknowledges the fact that he's always one step away from the gutter, and he doesn't want to let Cromwell down. So you're in this situation where Shardlake is trying to investigate the situation. He wants justice, but he's also got this guy with him who just wants to give Cromwell what he wants, because he acknowledges that his role is completely based on Cromwell's favor. It's a really interesting show. They have a bevy of skilled actors in all these different roles. I know that they filmed in several locations, but you really get kind of a vibe of it being this one place. Do you remember The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery, and how you got the sense that when he got to the monastery, there was always this very sort of enclosed feel, that when you were there, like the monastery was this presence around you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's very much the way this works. That he gets to this monastery to close it, and the monks are trying not to piss him off, but they're also acknowledge the fact that something's happened, and they don't want the church to be closed down, but they also acknowledge that something is going on, and Shardlake is trying to figure them out, and he acknowledges that there's good people there, but there's also fucking bastards. And I hope that it was a really good period detective piece, and it was enough so that I'm curious to read the books. But I enjoyed it a lot. I hope they make more. I mean, it has a really strong BBC vibe. I don't know if BBC did it, but it feels like the BBC did it, which is a good thing, I mean, now that I'm done with that, I have to go watch Shogun. That was the other thing I wanted to watch on Hulu, which is I was like Shardlake and Shogun, but I wanted Shardlake first. So if you're looking for a really good like historical detective series, like very sort of traditional detective series, then yeah, check Shardlake out. He's a really cool detective type character, and he's got the Cromwell guy with him who is also interesting because he's this guy who desperately wants to give Cromwell what he wants. Like I said, so like everybody has their own goals. Everybody has what they want, and nobody feels wasted. Like everybody has an agenda. Everybody's doing their thing, and even the people that you don't like there's monks in the series that you're like you don't like them, but you kind of get why they're doing what they're doing. And for a lot of these guys, this is their livelihood. This is their world. They don't know what's going to happen to themselves as the monastery gets closed, and they know that Cromwell is looking for any reason to close them. Yeah, it was hugely enjoyable. And I look forward to them making more, which I don't know if they are, but I hope they do. But Hulu is kind of, I don't know, how stable is Hulu?
Well,
Because
Disney
they
owns
actually-
it, so
Well, now
they
you're
have
right.
they
now,
have
yeah.
money in the bank if Disney chooses to.
Yeah, no,
allow
you're
it to
right.
open.
You're right. So there is the possibility that I might get more Shard-like.
Yeah.
I mean, Shogun apparently has been fantastic. People love
Yeah,
that.
and that was supposed to be a one and done, and they're making more, so that tells you something.
Oh, they're gonna make. Are they gonna make the rest of the books
Yeah,
now?
they basically said there's going to be a second season somehow. I don't know, whatever they're going to do. But,
Well, no, because there's like 6 or 5 Shogun books.
well, but I think the way the series ended, I haven't watched yet, but I was told no, it's meant to be one and done, and it was meant to be one and done. So
Wait, they meant to do all the books?
no, they just I don't know how much of the books. I don't know how it was done.
Hold on.
All I was told
I'm
was it's
curious.
an
Hold
excellent
on.
single series.
Shogun
So I
series, just the first book.
and I never read the book, so I don't care. That's of
Oh, I
zero
know.
interest. But I was just told, I asked somebody whose opinion I value, and I said, is this a one and done or is it a cliffhanger? And this person said, no, this is absolutely a one and done series.
Okay.
That's what they said. That's what they've done.
Okay, so the first series is the first book.
Okay.
And it is one and done in that they completed the first book, they completed the story.
Okay.
So they are now going to do the next book in the series. But to my knowledge, the next book in the series takes place much later on.
Well, then maybe that's how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's very
hold on
possible.
a second. Shogun. Because the second Shogun book is called, by James Clever. What is it called? Shit.
Shogun 2, Age of Shogun.
No, his books have a neat name. My mom loved these books when I was growing up. So they were always
Shogun,
around.
Here We Katana Again. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Katana 2. The first one's Shogun. The second one's called Taipan. That's what it is. There's Shogun, Taipan, Gaijin, King Rat, Noble House, and Whirlwind.
Well, I guess they'll be doing book 2, I suppose.
Yes, they're going to do Taipan. Speaking of which, did you see the trailer for the new Assassin's Creed in Japan?
Yeah, looks like every other one, so I'm sure.
Oh,
it'll be
yeah,
good.
but I mean, they still look good. They still look fun.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no intention of playing as the big armored guy. I would always want to play the stealth assassin. I love the Tenchu games, so the female one looked.
Are they gonna make them co-op for once? Would that be nice?
They haven't mentioned it, but they haven't really talked about it yet, so I don't know.
I'll totally be the big black guy.
Yeah, that's fine. You could be him.
But but didn't they director's cut for what's the other samurai game that we played?
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, didn't they release a director's cut for that recently? It's supposed to be like a super final edition that they did.
Maybe
for
they
that?
did. I don't know. I don't think that one. The story wasn't that impressive to me. I had more fun in the co-op, and I don't think they added any of that. So
No, that's what I was hoping. I was
Yeah.
hoping that they did this director's
I don't
cut.
think
Yeah.
so. Unless I'm wrong, I'll look into it. But I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think if they just make these Assassin's Creed games co-op, they
Oh,
will
it'd be
earn
delightful.
themselves. Yeah, they'll earn themselves some players.
Oh yeah, of course I would play it.
But it does. But the thing is, I guess I'm always excited about Assassin's Creed trailers because it always looks good.
Well, and I'm sure the game will be perfectly fine. I have no reason to think it won't be. I just, if it's going to be another big bloated,
Oh, it will be. You know that.
well, I don't know. Mirage wasn't. So
True. They did try to
but,
change.
But
things up.
this feels like it's a big sequel, not a small one. But I am happy that you have two ways of playing it. So if somebody wants to play the big Black Samurai, great, play that. But I, of course, am interested in the Shinobi, the stealth
Yeah, if you want to play it like a brawler, or if you want to play it like
so that's great. That's great. There's two options.
Yeah, I love
That's
his
fine.
bat. He's got that giant bat, the armor.
No,
bat. It's great.
I assumed immediately that he would appeal to you and the female assassin appealed to me. Because my whole thing is I want to kill as many people without ever being seen as possible. So
Yeah, whereas I just want to start a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I just figured I'd mention that. Otherwise, that's all I got for you.
Okay, well, I have two reviews, two films. One there's not much to say about because it's so well regarded and well reviewed that I'm not going to really improve on much of it. You can't watch it anywhere but France at the moment. So I thank the person who sent me a link, and I don't know how they had the copy they did for me to be able to stream, but I'm not going to ask any questions either.
What's
Thank
it
you very
called?
much. It is called Mars Express. It's actually, I believe, a 2023 film technically, but it's only just now getting to the
Oh,
US in
you
theaters.
fucker! You watched this?
I did. I had somebody who messaged me and said, I can't leave this up for long. If I send you a link for this, can you watch it in the next 3 days? I'm like, sure.
Damn it, I want to see this.
Yes, you do. Because it is... Okay, now, I should say, this movie has been compared to Ghost in the Shell by a lot of people. I sort of understand why in terms of some of the themes, but I would more... yeah.
You know what this makes me... when I saw the trailer, you know what this made me think of?
What's that?
What was that anime that Kiefer Sutherland did the voice for? With the... she's in red. What's it called?
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you mean. Yeah. God, what was that? Now it's bugging me. Hold on.
And I think Pioneer did it.
It's not Armitage, is it? What is it?
It might be. Yes, it is. Armitage 3.
Okay, yeah, okay. It is Armitage 3, yes. Okay.
Yeah, Armitage 3, yeah. I saw this trailer, and I don't know why, but there was something in it that made me think of Armitage 3.
Well, what I would immediately compare this to is another French animated film called Renaissance, which is...
I was thinking that too. It's like a colored Renaissance.
Well, it's more that it feels very European in the way that it plays out, and it's a very simplified art style. You compare it to Ghost in the Shell, and people are going to expect that level of animation, which it is not. It's not that it's bad, but it is clearly not prioritizing the animation. It's keeping things very simple and fluid enough that you don't think that there's anything wrong with it, but it is not trying to be a detailed, beautifully animated film.
Is the story good?
The story is excellent. And that's where they put what this really is. And I really will be curious what a lot of American audiences think of this, because it's weighted very oddly compared to what most films do, in that it has a very brief third act. I've seen people complaining that the ending is rushed. I don't think that's correct. But the ending is not the point. The ending is fast because it doesn't matter. The ending is really not what matters. The movie, the basic premise, it's very simple, really, starts off and a student in a university is murdered, and a pair of cops are called in, detectives are called in to look into it. One of the parents says our daughter has disappeared and calls these PIs in, and the female human is A-line, is I think how you're supposed to pronounce it. It was subtitled, so I think I've got the pronunciation right. A-line, and then her partner is Carlos.
Or Aileen. It's Aileen or A-line. Yeah.
I guess it could be Aileen, yeah. Now that you say that, it probably is Aileen. I wasn't really paying attention because I was more fascinated by what the story was once I started figuring out what was going on.
Yeah.
And then her partner is Carlos, who is an android that has the memory of her partner. Well, you find out that Carlos and another guy whose last name is Roy Jacker, which is a great last name, far better than his first name, which is Chris.
And the guy who does his voice is the bad guy from Quantum of Solace.
Who, Roy Jacker?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's barely in it, really. So, but this is what I mean is it's going to throw some people. I just know it, the American audiences. But anyway, Carlos and Aileen. Carlos died, and it's sort of the. It is sort of the, oh God, we were just talking about it, the thing where people get sleeved. It's sort of the altered carbon model.
Yeah.
Where, if you die, your consciousness can be put into an android body. But it also, and this is what I think is the closest Ghost in the Shell thing, is there is a law, I think it's a law against what Ghost in the Shell calls ghost dubbing. And in this world, they call it like double sleeve. They call it, I don't think they say double sleeve.
Double sleeve, where there's two versions of you.
Yeah, there's two of you running around. Yeah. You're not supposed to be doing that. So basically, they're looking into this student's death. They find out that the person who was killed was a mistaken identity thing. They were actually after the other student because they find some footage of her messing around with a robot because she's at a cybernetics university. And when she's messing around with the robot, she does something that makes it seem to come alive. And robots are not supposed to have free will. It's not the 3 laws. They call them the directives, but it's basically the 3 laws of robotics. And so that stops, a robot cannot strike somebody. We see a part where Carlos goes back and he keeps wanting to see his daughter, and his wife has remarried, and he was an asshole when he was alive. He admits it, that he was abusive, but now that he's a robot, he is not that way anymore. But he goes to actually hit the new husband, and he stops. He can't. Because he's a robot, so he can't hit him. And so they locate the woman the student, and they realize that she's actually also working as a prostitute because she can't afford school. So she's dubbed herself and has another body that works as a prostitute to finance her going to school.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh yeah.
That's
it's a whole thing.
Fucked up.
Yeah. So they find
to
her.
do that to yourself.
Yes. And so what they find out is that she doesn't know exactly what she did that triggers the robot to come alive, and they're trying to figure it out. And then she gets killed, which Aileen had been sober for some amount of years. She immediately falls off the wagon. So she becomes a train wreck. And Carlos, you really begin to realize that Carlos is the main character. The more this goes on, it becomes clear that even though Aileen is positioned as the lead, she really isn't. Carlos is the main character. And so then they end up going and finding a hacker who they had arrested at the beginning of the film, who was trying to break androids out of their, basically whatever their shackles, whatever programming it is, and free them. And there's a part where they're sitting there and they're talking to her, and you see two androids that she's freed, and they're just sitting there staring upwards, and they're like, their hands are out and they're beaming at each other. And she's like, oh, it's so boring. All they do is get high and have sex forever. Why does anybody even want to be free like this? But you realize the androids have no interest in people. They just want to go into cyberspace, have sex, and trip out all day. So there's this whole thing where Carlos is kind of fascinated by the fact that this is what freed androids do, because he's a consciousness that's been put back into a body, as opposed to an android that started out that way. So there's a difference with him. And you also find out that Roy Jacker is this big Elon Musk type who has, because robots are basically hated on Earth. It's like a Blade Runner type thing where they don't want them around, even though they know they're controlled, and they just don't like them. And so Roy Jacker's solution is, well, then I will create an organic AI, and that way people aren't afraid of robots. But you see that people have these little squishy things, and they're trying to use them, and they don't work right. And so eventually what they find out is, because Aileen goes to Roy Jacker, they're friends. Her, Carlos, Roy Jacker were in the army together. And then at one point she's told, well, Roy Jacker's the one who ordered that girl to get killed, because he doesn't want there to be any possible way that robots can have any type of autonomy. Basically, they want to have them enslaved so that he can have these, he's basically losing money. And so this is his plan, is to make these organic versions, because, that can take over and people will be more comfortable with it. But so they go to confront him. And when they go and confront him, he says, well, this isn't really me. I'm just the front man for this group of people who want me to insert this programming to override all the androids. And I didn't want this girl to figure it out. She was getting too close to seeing what the actual programming was. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he says, the programming isn't meant to have them take over. The programming is meant to make them all leave the planet, because we've realized that as long as they're here, the organic thing I'm trying to make, it sucks and it can't work. So people are eventually going to go back to these robots, except that they hate them, and we're afraid there's going to be like a civil war or something. So if we could just get all these robots to leave, and then we'll be fine. We're going to tell them to just go fly out into the sun. And she's like, what? Right? They basically will kill themselves.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to stop him, but she can't. The code goes out and all the programming starts changing. And so she's confronting him, at which point Carlos is outside fighting one of his organic robots, this big, it looks almost like it's kind of like a fleshy version of the tank from Ghost in the Shell. And so he's out there fighting it, and these guys come in, and he tries to run in there to save her. She gets killed, and Carlos basically shoots Roy Jacker and kills him, because unbeknownst to anybody except Aileen until for a while, he had the hacker free him and just didn't say anything, and he's stuck with Aileen. This is what I mean about he's the main character. So she gets shot and killed, and you see him kind of wander out, and he's just like broken down because the only person he really had was Aileen. She's dead. There's actually a point where he looks over and she's walking towards him, and you think maybe she lived, and then you realize that it's just him wishing that she was there, and he realizes she's dead. And so he looks over and he sees all these robots that are marching to a space shuttle, because they have these, orbital shuttles that can take, because this is on Mars. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Starts on Earth, ends up on Mars.
Well, so to be fair, it is called Mars.
Right, but I didn't make it clear. Yeah. So he sees them going towards one of these super shuttles, and he goes into the group, and he's talking to them, and he's talking to one, and he says, you're all being forced to do this. They programmed you to want to leave. And the rest of them say, well, yeah, we know that. And he says, well, then why would you go? And they say, well, they don't want us here. And honestly, they're only going to treat us like shit, so why would we stay? We'll go out there and we'll take our chances. It's better than staying here and being hated and having them try to control us all the time. And Carlos is looking around and kind of realizes that, yeah, with Aileen dead, what's the point of me being here anymore? And so they all go to the ship. They all get beamed into basically the mainframe, and the ship takes off, and the movie ends, and you're made to come up with whatever happens next. But the movie is really mostly just establishing
that is a very European ending.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And the majority of the movie's real focus is establishing Aileen and Carlos as friends, to the point where when she gets killed, I was actually shocked, because even though I kind of realized that she wasn't the lead, I didn't know what Carlos's response would be, because once he doesn't have his programming anymore, I thought, oh, is he just going to flip out and start shooting everybody? Like, what is he going to do? Because he does go back to the wife's house when the robot uprising starts, because they're starting to flip out and some people are being killed by the robots because they're kind of getting in their way. So he runs back to the house and the husband's there and starts shooting him, and he basically knocks him down and says, "Moron, I didn't come here to hurt you. I came here to make sure they were all right." And he's like, "I made sure of that. Now I'm leaving. Fine, you're done with me." And he leaves. And that's where he's walking in with the group of robots, and he realizes, okay, there's just nothing left here because nobody cares about me. The only human that I have any relationship with is dead, and eventually they're going to try to deactivate me, I'm sure.
And the question is, why are they creating robot versions of people?
Well, no, he doesn't look like a person. He looks like a robot with a holographic head.
I know he's a floating head on the thing, but I'm saying, why do they even make these?
Well, originally I think the idea was service robots, service bots.
Okay.
That's what you basically see them as. They're in different domestic situations, like, minding doors.
So are they always copies of people, or are any of them just...
Oh, no. Many of them are weird-looking robots that are like in the form of a vacuum. Not a vacuum, but a future vacuum, I guess, like a Roomba with a little head on it and that type of thing. Oh, no. They are not all humanoid. Many of them are not. But humans are allowed to, if you can, I guess, pay for it to have insurance, you can get a robot body where they stick your holographic head on the top, and that's your body. So... And there's various forms of augmentation that some people have. Not everybody. People have, Ghost in the Shell type cybernetics, and you can't tell. Like Aileen just has a jack on the back of her neck that she plugs into, and that's it. That's all you ever see. As far as we know, that's her only enhancement, is the ability to be able to mainline into a system. Whereas Carlos is an android.
I'm kind of surprised
that
he doesn't try to jack her into a body at the end.
Well,
is there no copy?
No. Well, no, because no, I think it's more because everything is falling apart at that point. So it's more of at that point he couldn't make it without getting destroyed or something, because everything is falling apart. She gets killed at the very end after the uprising is already well into play. So I think it's more of, I don't know if she didn't have a copy, or if at this point everything's been destroyed that would allow her, the infrastructure for it, I think, is all trashed, because it's basically like a global upheaval when this is happening. Like everything is going crazy. So I think it's more of the fact that he would probably be shot by the police, because they're destroying robots. The cops are like blowing robots up because they realize that it's being positioned as, okay, the robots have turned on us. So I don't know how he would be able to get to any type of the mechanisms to allow it to happen. Yeah, I don't know if there is even a backup or not, but I also don't think that's the point. I think it's more of, and she at that point was disillusioned and she was a drunk again, and so I think at that point she was almost like, she didn't have much left either.
Yeah.
Not exactly the happiest ending to a film you'll ever watch, but it didn't
look like it was a happy movie.
But it's not really sad. It's not sad. It's just,
But I understand that the comparison to Ghost in the Shell, because Ghost in the Shell, the end of Ghost in the Shell is not necessarily happy or sad. The Major does get in the movie. We're doing the movie version. The Major does get destroyed, but she also gets uploaded. But when
I always thought the ending was I was very uplifting, because she is now a completely free individual in the freest space possible.
She is free, but Bateau has to some degree feels like he's lost his friend.
Well, that's when you get to the second movie. The second movie is Bateau, the misery.
Yeah, I know. And then when you get to, and that's what I mean. Like it does feel like it could happen in a similar universe.
Yes, there is that. So, like I said, my biggest concern when people start making that comparison is it's such a different film than what Ghost in the Shell is. Ghost in the Shell is an action film with these philosophical underpinnings that are threaded throughout it. This is far more of almost a morose kind of morality tale about what would actually happen if we had robots with some kind of soul. And, what would the ultimate end of that be? Which we've talked about. I mean, this very thing is one of the I did the show with Rojan at one point about AI or somebody, and I remember saying, how do we know they weren't here and they just left because they were like, well, fuck this. That's what this is. This is a very long road to, you know what? We don't need you. We're leaving. We're done with it. And they just take off.
It is the idea that once you separate a mind from a body, it becomes an entirely different species that has entirely different goals. And the two are no longer compatible.
Well, also I think that it wisely shows that people will be paranoid and suspicious and controlling.
Yeah.
Because they do kind of say, well, one of the reasons we're leaving is because they don't want us here. They're afraid of us. They're going to just keep trying to do this to us. So why would we stay here and even try to help them? Let's just go.
We were just talking about X-Men. What is the whole beginning of X-Men? We're mutants. Right. They don't like us. They don't trust us. They want to kill us.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's the age-old problem with humans. We're suspicious of anything that's different.
Right, exactly. So, like I said, it's excellent. It's gotten great reviews all over the place. So, it will be out, I'm sure, pretty soon because it's in theaters in the U.S. I would imagine.
I still want to see it.
Yeah, I would imagine it will within the next 2 to 3 months be easily rentable in whatever digital store. So excellent. And I don't know if there's an English dub or not. I watched the subtitle version. I would imagine this movie might command a more premium voice acting cast, so it might be one that comes out with big names on it, which would be interesting to hear because I think sometimes when they bring the right people in, those can be very good. But subtitled, if you mind subtitles, then don't watch the version I watched, which is subtitled, but I thought it was great. So, yeah, that's Mars Express. Like I said, it's being very well received, so there's not much this is not a surprise. Oh, I really liked it. Nobody else did type of thing. What may be a surprise, because most people do not like this movie, and it critically didn't do very well, but this is one of the many breadcrumbs off of our 13th Warrior rabbit hole, is I realized that I've never seen McTiernan's first movie, which is from 1986, and it's called Nomads. Have you ever seen this film with Pierce Brosnan as the French guy?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, we talked about this briefly, that neither of us had seen this movie.
Okay. So I didn't remember whether you said you'd seen it, because sometimes you'll have seen things and just don't remember them. But
no, I haven't seen this one.
Unlike Mars Express, you can watch this everywhere. But I guess because most people don't like it. So it's on every free streaming service possible. Tubi, Plex, Freevee, everything. I'm sure it's on YouTube because I don't think anybody cares. So it is described many different ways, but the best, I think, descriptor of it is an urban fantasy, which I think is very correct. And I thought of Near Dark watching this movie, but it's not nearly as good as Near Dark. I will say that objectively. This is not anywhere near as wonderful a movie in terms of its finished version as Near Dark. What it feels much more like is The Keep by Michael Mann, in that this is clearly not a complete film.
I have a description, but I don't know if it makes any sense to me.
Ooh, good. No, tell me, because I don't know if anything could make sense.
A French anthropologist gets murdered in Los Angeles after discovering the existence of ancient demonic spirits first described in old Inuit legends that can take human form and prank, possess, or even kill people. Before he dies, he reveals this secret to a young female doctor who quickly realizes that his wife is now in danger as well.
That is correct, but it also doesn't get as weird as the movie is. So,
Okay.
Yes, everything in that description is factually correct, but there are some additions that we have to include. So, yes,
Okay.
The movie starts out very short. It's a 90-minute movie or so. Movie starts out, Pierce Brosnan comes into an emergency room dying, ranting in French. By the way, you will hear his French accent, and it is magnificently horrible. Because this was supposed to be Gerard Depardieu, and he dropped out at the last minute, and this is Pierce Brosnan's first main role. My understanding is. Oh, yeah. And he's doing a high-voiced French accent, which is horrific. You'll hear it. So anyway, he comes in, he's ranting and ranting and ranting, and there's a female doctor who, for some reason, a lot of people are confused on whether she's leaving LA or coming there when it's very clear she's there from Boston, because she calls somebody who used to work with her in Boston who says we'd love to have her back. So I don't know why people are so confused on this plot point. It's pretty easy to figure out. So if you just listen to what's being said, you'll know what's going on.
So Brosnan's not the lead.
Well, he sort of is, and he sort of isn't. Here's one of the things about this movie. It really doesn't have a lead because it's doing this alternating. So when he comes in, he's dying, right? Female doctor is treating him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know why this movie is special?
Why?
This movie got McTiernan the Predator job.
Okay, we're going to get to that.
That's
amazing.
weird.
Yeah, which makes apparently Schwarzenegger saw this, thought it was really atmospheric, which it is, for a low budget, which it was, and that's what made him say, "Get me this guy for Predator." Now, my theory on that, because there are many theories. My theory on that is that he had a perfect person to either blame the film's failure on or say, I found this guy and I saw what he could do.
It's very Arnold.
It's a beautiful angle, and it makes complete sense from that, because you watch this movie and you see nothing of what Predator would have been. Nothing in this. Because it's very clear they're shooting around LA at night, probably the only time they could afford to do it. And there's nothing of the perfection that Predator would be in here. None of it. So anyway, he comes in, he's ranting, raving, covered in blood. The female doctor is trying to treat him. She doesn't know what he's saying, and he grabs her and says something, whispers in her ear, and then dies, at which point she starts reliving his last days. So the movie's bouncing back and forth between him and her, kind of stumbling around trying to figure out what the hell she's seeing. And so they are both the lead. But most of the movie, you're seeing him, but it's her reliving his memories, and then we're cutting back to her as we're getting some exposition and filling on what's going on. So she's just, and this is like, she is reliving it. She is seeing this from his perspective in his body, and we are seeing the scenes of him, and then it will cut back to her kind of, looking at something he was looking at, but now it's a wall type of thing.
This is an interesting directorial challenge, is what it is.
Yes, which, to be completely objective, is not artfully done all the time. In fact, it is a mess at many points, but it is riveting. And I really enjoyed it, just to cut to the end. But here is the explanation, because they think when he first gets brought in, even though he is gorgeous Pierce Brosnan, they somehow think he's a street person. And then they quickly find out that that's not the case. So what you're going to hear is this is
beautiful people can be homeless as well.
No, what I'm saying is he does not, even with blood all over him, he does not look like somebody who's been living on the streets of LA for any amount of time at all. So the lead doctor is Dr. Flax, and she's sitting, and her colleague, and I should have pulled audio just of this other woman. She is so potty-mouthed. I loved her instantly. She you will hear her yelling at points, but she is just drops the F-bomb constantly and with great relish, and I am positive that this character was never an LA character, but was in fact a New York character, just from the way that she swears and talks. She's magnificent. She should have her own film. But anyway, she's sitting there with this woman, and then the head of the, I don't know how all the doctor stuff falls out, but I guess the head of the department, the head doctor, comes in to kind of tell her, oh yeah, we found out some information about the guy that came in. So this is him explaining who Pierce Brosnan is and what they found is when they did the toxicology and everything.
You know your nutcase from last night? Well, the lab report came back this morning. No drugs. Adrenal residue enough to frizz a horse, but no dope.
Wonder what happened to him.
Looked like some creep off the beach, right?
Yeah.
The man was an anthropologist from UCLA. Spoke half a dozen languages, lived all over the world, and was apparently a very famous individual.
Jesus. What kind of people did he study anyway?
Oh. This morning in Richter's office, I got to look at his wife. She's this elegant-looking redhead, just the opposite of what he looked like. And the crazy thing about it is they've only been in the country a week. Well, I got a minute flat to get to 7.
Walking backwards.
I tried that. I promised I'd actually be there this time. Eileen?
Hey. Hey, quit it. Mm-hmm. Your lip. If you don't quit chewing on it, it'll look like your ear. Hey, Eileen, are you okay?
Oh, sure. Cassie, what does, N'y sont pas. Sont désignés, I mean.
Shit. N'y sont pas. They are not there, they are...
Sont désignés.
Sont désignés. Sounds like a place. I don't know why.
And what she's repeating there, the French, is the last thing that he said to her. And yeah, he bit her ear or something as he was talking to her, which I don't know what that was about, but that was just something that happened. That's why they were referring to your lip's going to look like your ear. So then we start getting more of the flashback stuff where we're seeing Pierce Brosnan. Now you're going to get, here comes this French accent, which is beautiful. And this is where they are getting their new house in LA, which is now he's finally going to settle down with his wife, and they're going to have a family, and he's done with all the world traveling and all the weird stuff he's seen, and he's ready to just, take a teaching job and just live a normal American life. So here is just relish in this. And yes, this is Pierce Brosnan. You'll hear little bits of the voice that we know, but it also sounds quite wild.
I admit that science is not my long suit, but anthropology, that's bones and tombs and things.
No. Nothing so dramatic. My work is cultural.
No!
Oh, God.
At least it's warm, eh?
Oh, man.
I mostly watch people.
Oh, but I thought you were teaching here this fall.
Yes, I'm afraid that is so.
Listen to him. The first civilized place we live in years. And already he's bald.
Oh, yes, I'm a French, very French. Oh, it's now, they must have realized later that you'll hear his voice is that in this first scene, his voice is way higher than it is in the rest of the movie. I mean, it's still high, but it sounds like a parody when he's doing this.
Yeah.
And this is the first scene where he's really speaking, because in the other one he's saying French stuff, but he sounds normal. His voice is pitched normally. Here is it's ridiculous, which is it just because I know Pierce Brosnan from most of his more recent work, right? So it's just so weird because it's almost like it's a comedy when he's talking, and it's not. He's playing it straight because I guess they thought that a French person had to have this heavy of an accent, and he's trying, and it's just a train wreck. Again, I think these are all factors why people don't look on this movie very favorably. I think that's part of it because it is ridiculous. I mean, you were laughing because it is comical.
Yeah, but here's the thing. For them, they were probably sitting there going, nobody knows who Pierce Brosnan is. They probably think this is his accent.
Correct. Yeah, nobody would have really known. So So they get this house, and he is looking at the garage, and on the garage it has that night he comes out, and the garage has been spray painted, and it says something like "Sex Guns Kill." And he happens to notice that there's a black van driving away, and he sees it. So he doesn't really think anything of it. He kind of cleans it off. But then as he's looking through the garage, inside the garage, it says something like Gutman is a hero or something. And he finds all these bloodied pieces of newspaper that are referring to a serial killer who killed kids, who has the same last name. And he's like, why would they say this person's a hero? He's finding all this weird stuff. And as the nights are going on, he keeps seeing this black van. And so one night he decides to go and follow them, and he sees them just kind of driving around, and they basically look like a mid-'80s punk band. But the most captivating one is Mary Warnoff, who is she didn't do a lot of movies, but she's very striking looking. She almost looks like a female version, not a transvestite version, but a female version of Tim Curry in Rocky Horror. She's magnificent looking. Like, she looks terrifying. And but Adam Ant is the leader of the gang. He says nothing. He doesn't have a single line, but he's in there.
Geez,
and
that's hilarious.
Oh yeah. So like Mary Warnoff is she's riveting. I would watch a whole movie around that character because she just looks so good in this thing, and she does look like she could reach down your throat and tear your colon right out of your mouth. So he's watching them and he's taking pictures and he's kind of trying to stay hidden, but there are these indications that they know he's there, but they're just kind of doing things. They're just, beating people up, and they're just kind of throwing bottles and making mischief. But he follows them, and he's sitting there saying they're not sleeping, they're not stopping, they just keep moving around. And so there's a point where he's been following them, I think, for 30 hours, and they just keep moving and they don't sleep. And so he finally comes back to his house, and he is just ragged, and he's like raving, and he hasn't called his wife, and she's very pissed. And so she's like smacking him in the face for making her worry. And he starts to explain what is so odd about these people. And we are going to get more of that beautiful French accent. So, and he's yelling with it too. So it's at times almost indecipherable. So this is him explaining what is so unusual about these people.
About them. And yes, I didn't tell you because I wanted to know what kind of people could think of a murder as some sort of shrine. Will you listen to me? I spent 30 hours following people who do not live any place. Écoute-moi, do not work any place. I call the government, the state, their vehicle, it is not registered.
Why do you tell me?
Don't you understand? They're nomads.
What?
Nomads. Nomads, yes, like all of them. Like every place we've lived for the last 10 years.
Here?
Yes, here now in this city, in the middle of a modern city. They go from one party to the next. One restaurant, one gas station, one hotel. These people live in parking lots. In 30 hours, they did not stop moving. Don't you understand what I'm saying? I didn't call you. I didn't tell you. Because I didn't want to frighten you. I should have called. There was no reason. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. Forgive me. I'm very tired. Very tired. None of this may mean anything. None of it at all. I may have simply... But I may have found people who are living outside. Outside any structure. They do not participate. No exchanges, no constraints. They resort to violence at no provocation. And they get away with it. It's as if to the official world they did not exist. I don't know.
Now, what a lot of people have pointed out about this particular...
Couldn't they just been on a drug bender?
Well, that's what they say, is why is this such a big deal? Couldn't this just be a group of homeless people or punks who just roam around? And the thing is, and I think this is absolutely a legitimate criticism, the movie does not properly explain this, but he kind of alludes to it where he says, we've seen these type of people in every single country we've lived in. And there's all these photographs that at random times are zoomed in on and appear to show these lone people or these people who are kind of outside the group or doing weird things. And I think what they were trying to subliminally or with not enough exposition explain was that he has run into these weird people before, that because it specifically becomes a point later that they aren't being seen, that they're invisible until they do something. And then if people don't really pay attention, they become invisible again. And that's why they can get away with what they're doing and why they can exist, where they're going around. And at one point they do kill somebody right in front of him. So I think they're trying to indicate that the presence of these spirits exist everywhere. And that they are these types of demons that are simply in every, or outside, I guess, of every society. But it doesn't do it very elegantly. And so, yeah, the way he's talking about it is like, okay, yeah, there are people like that in America. Just because it's a city doesn't mean that everybody crosses the street when the light is green or red or whatever, and they don't obey the walk signs. Yeah. Where have you been? And I think what the movie doesn't do a good job of explaining is that he's recognizing and has seen these types of people before, and to some degree thought that coming here would be away from them. Because, he has all these very specific photos of people on the ice, these Inuit hunters, who we then are told these are Inuit spirits. So it's almost like this particular, and I looked it up, this is not, as far as I could tell, these things do not actually exist in Inuit mythology whatsoever. This is a made-up word, the Imwatak or whatever it is. Or it's a word, but I looked into Inuit kind of mythology, and there was no reference to these specific things. So I think this was something made up. And this is the only thing that John McTiernan ever wrote. This was the one writing credit he's got. I think he figured out he wasn't very good at it, probably based on the reviews and the fact that, watching it is a messy film. But it is atmospheric as hell. It does have these moments where with the soundtrack and other things, because the soundtrack's by the guy who did the Rocky soundtrack, did this, but it's not anything like that. It feels a lot like Near Dark. Yeah, it's odd. But I kept thinking of The Keep, which is also a mess, but it's a riveting mess. I mean, it's very watchable. So he keeps following them and kind of not telling his wife what he's doing, even though he just acknowledged that was something he shouldn't be doing. And there's finally a point where they're murdering a guy, I think, or maybe they were just kind of stabbing him and he lived. It was hard to tell. And there is no excuse for this, is how stupid he is at points with revealing himself. He does dumb things. Because when they're stabbing this guy, he yells, "Hey, stop." And of course, then they see him. And he's like, "Uh-oh," and starts running. Well, no shit. Why didn't you just stay or, take a picture and then go away and call the cops? There are still payphones. It's 1986. You could have called somebody, but no, he yells. So they're chasing him. He manages to get the drop on him, sort of, but then he thinks that he hears them again. So he runs into this empty building, and it just so happens inside this empty building is a nun with really weird eyes. Now, this is another part of the film where I'm not entirely clear on what was going on here, because the actress is clearly wearing some kind of weird white milky contacts to show that she's blind or something. Yeah. But then in the next scene, the scene that I have the clip from, her eyes are normal. And when she first appears, she seems very sinister. But then when she's talking to him, she appears to be helpful. So I don't know if he was drawn in by... And then later we are shown someone hanging who sure looks like it's the nun, but we're not sure. So my suspicion is that she exists as both the demonic spirit, but also is being friendly. I'm not sure. Or there's two of her in there. It's not really clear. I don't know that it really matters. It doesn't bother me if it's both or neither. But I think, again, a standard audience goer watching this will be like, what the fuck is going on here? This woman has completely different eyes and looked like she was going to eat him when she beckoned him in, and now she's telling him, hey, you're in a lot of danger. So I'm going to play this because she is explaining some of what I think, again, the movie doesn't do a great job in laying out, which is the fact that why they're not being arrested or seen or having any problems. So here you'll hear her talking, and this is where she's the helpful nun.
I haven't any lemon. I trust that's all right.
They're usually so regular about sending the boy around with groceries. I can't imagine what happened. Oh, perhaps I thought the days muddled again.
Oh, not that way, Mr. Pommier. In here, if you will.
You know about them, don't you?
There are places with pasts, Pommier. Places with secrets. Things. Collect. You just look too closely. Most people are luckier. They never know that a certain percentage of what they see is not there. But the problem now is not what you know. It's what they know. You. They know about you. Go away, Palme. Leave your house and change your job. Go and hide yourself. You can still survive this. But you must not try to fight them. Listen to me. If you've never run from anything in your life, run from this. They're leading you into another world.
They're not real. They can't do anything.
They brought you here, Palme.
What was this place? What happened here?
You must leave now. Don't pursue this. It won't end with you, you know. Go do as I say. For the sakes of those you'll lead them to.
Right, so right then they start showing up. They're all wearing nun outfits and they're running around, and he starts to run, and they're chasing him. And then we see, like I said, what looks like the nun has been hung, and it's hard to hear it. But at the beginning, she's talking as if she's in a normal building and it's a normal day, and that's why I think she's the spirit of the dead nun, and the creature that beckoned him in was a different one of them that was disguised as her. But again, it's not clear. I don't care, but I think that's my way of interpreting what was shown. So he's running, and they chase him, and he manages to lose them. He drives back to his house, at which point Adamant is there, and he grabs a tire iron out of the back of his car and beats him to death, and leaves him for dead, and then goes into the house. And at this point, we then cut back to the other doctor, the female doctor, and she's trying to find out where Dr. Flax is, the one that we're seeing all this through, who again is missing through most of the middle of this movie. That's why I don't know who the lead is supposed to be, really. But she gets a call because she's in the. You'll hear she not breaks in. She has the police open up the apartment. She's in there looking around, and then she hears the phone ring, and she thinks that it is the doctor, the possessed doctor, I guess we'll call her, Dr. Possession, is trying to call back in, or she thinks she hears her voice. So she thinks, oh, she's calling her own place. Let me see if I can get her. So this is where we're going to hear her colleague, and this voice you'll hear on the other end of the phone, the male voice, that's John McTiernan. He actually did this part, the voice part. This is him explaining, looking up the information that Dr. Flax had sent him about the Inuatak, or whatever they're supposed to be.
Phone's ringing. Told me she was a doctor. How am I supposed to know?
She is a doctor. Yeah, hello?
Hi, I'm sorry.
Oh, Christ, she's got a machine. Hey, find the fucking machine. Don't hang up, okay? Hang on.
I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Wait.
Yeah, hello?
Hi, Eileen. I got the stuff.
No, this isn't Eileen. This is a friend who's been Eileen isn't in at the moment. Can I take a message?
Sorry, she called me.
You spoke to her?
Mm-hmm. She called yesterday. She asked about something and I wanted to get back to her. Have you got a pencil?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Tell her that Daisy Noir is not a place. At least not one we could find. And no one around here seemed to think it had anything to do with anthropology. There was, however...
Eileen asked you about this?
Mm-hmm. There was, however, an Eskimo word, Inuit. It's pretty far-fetched, but... Oh, look, I'm sorry. I shouldn't impose all this on you. Have Eileen call me at area...
No. Where are you? Are you here?
Pardon me?
Where are you? Are you out here?
I'm in Boston. Why?
Look, just tell me. I'll get the gist of it for her. Do you mind?
No, it's apparently some sort of nomad myth. It has to do with wandering in the desert.
I thought you said it was Eskimo.
Well, it's all the same. Nomads live in deserts. Whether it's a desert of ice or sand or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. Apparently, the Eskimos spent a good deal of time wandering on the ice.
Looks like she's been packing.
And the Inuit...
Yeah, and there's another one over here.
Look, why don't you look in the bathroom and see if her toiletries are still there?
I'm sorry. Did you say... I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, nothing. I'm sorry. And the Inuit were...
Well, they were supposedly hostile spirits. According to the myth, they were capable of assuming human form. They, here, wait a second. Thought to inhabit places of past calamity. They brought disaster and madness to any humans who fell in with them. Only a myth, of course, but observers well into the 20th century marked how cautiously older Eskimo approached strangers on the ice. Hello? That's all we could find, I'm afraid. I don't know if that answers her question or not. Well, anyway, be sure and tell her we all miss her, and if she gets tired of all that sunshine, she's welcome back, all right?
And there's that little bit about, okay, she clearly moved from Boston to LA. I don't know why people get so mixed up on that. So there's your explanation of the myth. And there is a point in the movie where somebody says, but it was such a brief thing, I didn't clip it, where somebody says, well, LA is basically a city built on top of a desert. And so now we're starting to, okay, this is putting together the idea that they, because he's like, well, how could they be here? Oh, blah, blah, blah. It's because LA is a city built on a desert, and so nomads exist in desert areas, even though he talks about the fact that the Eskimos, which is ice, there's no deserts, but I guess because it's ice, it's an icy desert.
Snow is like a desert.
Right. Well, that's what I mean about they make a big point about the desert, but honestly, he should have just said nomads can exist anywhere where there's big space or something. It doesn't have to be just a desert. But this explains why we've seen the photos of these Inuit and the Eskimos that are all over the house. So now, like I said, the movie doesn't do a great job of really connecting this. But if you are paying attention, you're looking at the visuals, you start to piece it together yourself, even if, admittedly, it is not the best way to tell this story. So now, after having killed Adamant, Pierce Brosnan goes to bed with his wife. By the way, something for the ladies, he strips completely nude. You get to see them all.
Wait. He kills Adamant and just leaves him there?
Leaves him outside, goes in the house, collapses in bed with his wife, wakes up the next day, and the body's gone, which, of course, we knew it would be. So then he and the wife go and they decide to have a tourist trip, and they go up on top of some tall building in L.A., and they're up there, and at this point, Brosnan thinks maybe he is just imagining all this. And I clipped this little bit where he's talking about, I don't know, he's just kind of almost rambling about things, but he says, well, maybe I'm imagining this. Maybe I'm just going crazy or something like that. And he's talking about how we're all so far from home, which I don't know if he's referring to himself or the human race in general, or how people have been disconnected from myth. I'm not really sure. You can listen to this and you can decide for yourself.
I was so frightened last night. You were shaking.
Did you ever have a dream and not know when it started? The old men on Nativac used to tell a tale of the dangers of traveling far. Of hunting alone, on the ice. How one might no longer know what was real. We are so very far from home, you know. All of us. We have wandered so very far from home.
Please stop.
It is not important. I was tired, huh? I was tired, very tired. I was stupid and went 2 days without sleep. C'est fini. Tout fini. We should talk about our new life, eh? Our bourgeois life in this civilized place. Talk of things we planned, eh?
There'll be time enough for that.
Well, no, there won't. But you hear how his voice changes when it starts? It's kind of normal, and then when he's really laying on the accent, it goes up really high as he's accentuating words. So right after she says that, he looks over and one of the gang members is there and he loses it and he basically grabs the guy and throws him off the building. And then he yells and he wakes up, and then it's the doctor waking up in the bed in the house with the wife, who has not seen what happened to her husband and isn't even really sure he's dead. So now we're at the end of the movie. And so the woman explains to the wife, oh, and a lot of people are like, well, wait, does that mean that they had sex? The two women have sex? But she says, no, you slept on the couch. So how she got to the bed, we don't know. I think it's just lazy editing or something. It doesn't really matter. So basically the woman's like, we have to get out of here because your husband's dead. This gang is stalking you because you are in a house where I think they never specifically say it, but I'm pretty sure the guy who was the serial killer, who was Adam Ant, because you see his picture, he's the serial killer, I believe that was his house, or the people he killed lived in that house. It's never really clear, but that guy made the point of, and they keep reinforcing that they circle around certain areas where violence has happened, where, in the fact that it's got this, they keep coming back and graffitiing the garage. Like, there's some reason. And the only reason I can think of is that either it was the serial killer's house or the family he killed was living at that house. Something happened there, and that's why they keep coming back. So honestly, they probably could have just moved down the block and they would have been fine. But in either case, we're now at the end of the movie, and she's basically like, we have to get out of here. At which point the gang shows up, but the gang up till this point has just been essentially 5 people in a van. Well, now it's the van, a bunch of bikers, a bunch of other people. It's like 70 people all descend on the house. So the women, the wife and the doctor, basically go up into the attic, and they're hiding up there, at which point they break through the attic, and Mary Warnov, who's referred to as Dancing Mary in the movie, gets up in the thing and stares at them, and they start shrieking, at which point she smiles, and they leave. So the next morning, they kind of come down out of the crawl space, and they look around. Gang's gone. The house is utterly destroyed and trashed. Everything's been annihilated. And they're like, okay, we have to leave. And so they get in a car, and they're driving. And they're driving, and she's like, and the doctor says, whatever you see, this is very Indiana Jones. She says, whatever you see, don't stop. Just keep going. I don't care what you see. And so she's driving, and we see a motorcycle coming up behind them. And the motorcycle pulls up in front of them. And, of course, we already know what this is going to be. And the motorcycle kind of pulls into a turnout and spins around. And it's Pierce Brosnan on the motorcycle looking like a biker. In fact, you can see the picture of him. It's everywhere from this movie.
I saw that. Yeah.
That's the very end of the movie. The rest of the time, he just looks like a normal guy. But he's there, and he's staring at them.
He's become one of them.
He's one of them. Or something, because they talk about they could take human form, and they take the form. Because Adam Ant, I guess, isn't really the serial killer. He's the spirit that's mimicking him, I guess. I don't know. But he's there, and then they leave, and they cross the California state line. And when they do that, then Ghost Brosnan starts up the motorcycle and rides back into California. So I guess they respect state lines. I'm not really sure. But they drive off. Once they cross that, he leaves, then the movie ends. So I'm not going to tell you it's the best made movie there is. It is a bit of a mess, because I think, McTiernan wrote it, and I think he was directing his writing, and I don't think anybody else came in to help him with it, which probably would have been a good idea. But it's a concept that I could easily see somebody remaking, and the movie itself is very watchable. Even though it's not particularly cohesive, it is very atmospheric. There's, again, though, the interesting part is to watch this and consider that his next movie was Predator. Really tells you that a good writer paired with the right person makes an excellent film. And not everybody should be writing their own movies, George Lucas. So you can see where this movie's weakness, I really do believe, was his writing. Because it's some people called it boring. I don't think it's boring. Not much happens.
Honestly,
that is true.
It sounds like they should have did more with it.
Well,
I'm curious. I feel like there needs to be almost more world building with this idea.
I was about to say it probably could have used 10 minutes more of explaining what the nomads are doing and really making the direct connections. Because like I said, I'm inferring a lot, and I'm inferring a lot based on the fact that I'm filling a lot of this in myself, but not everybody can do that. I mean, that's not saying people are dumb. It's saying that not everybody has the level of imagination that a weirdo like you and I, or weirdos like you and I do. So it is probably very confusing for somebody who doesn't watch a lot of these types of movies or is not typically filling in the blanks of movies to figure all this out. And I may be wrong. I mean, the nun thing is very confusing. It's not subtle. Her eyes have weird contacts that almost look like alien contacts in. And
I saw the pictures when she looks creepy.
And then she just has normal eyes in the next scene. So it's like, well, what is that? And, who was the person who was hung? Or hanged, I guess. I assume it's her, but I don't know that. Was it just a random dead body in there?
Maybe she was long dead and they just assumed her form to talk to him.
Yeah, but then were they being falsely helpful? Because they don't ever be that helpful again unless one of them is going rogue or something.
Yeah,
so I I almost think it works better that she is a trapped spirit because, I mean, we're talking about demonic spirits at this point. So why not have a helpful Casper the Friendly Ghost hanging out there too? If maybe she's trapped in the place of her death, maybe that's how death works here. I don't know. I don't mind any of this, but watching it, you do have a bunch of questions at the end. Why does Pierce Brosnan now become a spirit ghost rider who won't cross state lines? That
or maybe they just took his form, right? And the idea is, if you look at me, if you notice me, then I have to come after you.
Which they did,
and I'm going to make myself. I know, but because they hid from them, they didn't look for them. Like, this is my own internal logic.
Well, they were running, and maybe that was what it was, because the nun does say, "Run, get out."
Yeah, because they ran from them, and then when they leave the house, they don't look at them. The deal is, you act like we're not here. You don't look at us. You don't notice us, and then we will basically let you go. We're disinterested now.
Absolutely fits in with what the movie shows us. Yeah. But like I said, I absolutely enjoyed watching it. This is a movie I could see myself coming back to here and there, where I'm just in the mood for something weird and offbeat, because it is well made enough. And I mean, the accent is truly the worst part of it. You just have to get through that accent because it is laughable.
It is bad, yeah.
There's no way around how horrible it is.
No, it's terrible.
But there's interesting lighting. Like, you can see that McTiernan knew how to direct a film. And I can sort of see where, again, Schwarzenegger could see this person as, okay, he clearly has some ability. Whether he can handle what I've got in mind is a different thing. But worst case, I'll say, well, I took a chance on the guy and he couldn't live up to it. But I like to help people out where I can. Or he could be like, yep, I chose him and look what we did together. And that's obviously what the story has become. So again, it's free to watch everywhere. I think it is an interesting movie. The soundtrack is very unique and specific. You only get little bits of it. I didn't get much of it, but there's some in the background.
Yeah.
But again, it feels like this weird in-between movie that sits between The Keep, which was a movie that was destroyed by studio interference, but ends up as a jumbled mess that is absolutely thrilling to watch, and something like Near Dark, which is a very well-made, small-scale film. And this is kind of in the middle. It wasn't interference. It was narrative incompetence, let's say. He was not able to cohesively craft the narrative and then film it. So I do think it's worth watching. I think it's got this interesting feeling to it. And it's only 90 minutes, and you can watch it everywhere, basically for nothing. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it necessarily is entirely successful as a movie. But it is one of those things where, especially to think about this compared to Predator, because he went from this movie to Predator. So it's like, Jesus, he somehow got everything right on that next one, because probably he didn't write it. So he was free to focus on the visuals and telling the story that somebody else had handed him. And that's clearly where because he never wrote one again. That is where his strength clearly is taking somebody else's vision and executing it in the way that he thinks is best. Trying to do both sides, not entirely successful, but interesting. So again, like I said, you can watch it everywhere on almost every service that there is. I watched it on Tubi, but you can pick whatever free service you want. I guess you could pay to rent it if you want to, but I don't know. Yeah, would I have been disappointed if I'd paid $5 for this? No, I would have said this is definitely worth a couple of bucks, $5 for it. Yeah, but you can watch it for free. So I would say try it out there and see what you think.
You know what it makes me think of in just a kind of a roundabout way. Sure. You remember that movie Fallen?
Yes, sure.
There's a strong kind of vibe of that.
That's what I'm saying. It has this really interesting feel. So even though you can tell the movie isn't entirely working, I don't think I would ever describe it as boring, because with the music and the way it's being lit and the fact that it's almost entirely at night and it's got this strange nightmare quality to it, it ends up being more interesting than it should be. Maybe that's the way to phrase it. But like I said, I was glad I watched it. It's not something I'll go back to frequently. I don't think I'll buy it, but because I can watch it for free. But I could see myself getting in the mood to like watch this and then watch The Keep and then watch Near Dark, because you kind of go up in quality every step of the way. Mm-hmm. That would be kind of a nice natural succession. So yeah, Nomads. I think it's worth watching once if you're into. And plus, there aren't a lot of urban fantasies. I mean, that is a really great description for what it is. And they are kind of a weird creature, because the trickster label is really the best one for it. They don't seem to want to kill people unless they really have to. They're more interested in just kind of making people feel odd and off-put, as opposed to being destructive forces that are out to kill everything. They're more of just, wow, those people just trashed that parking lot and nobody looked at that. That's kind of odd. Well, none of our business. Let's keep moving. They're like, and they run off. That's what this movie feels like. So that's it. So Mars Express, that's the sure bet out of the two. Yeah, I mean, if you watch the trailer for Mars Express and you're at all interested, you're going to have a great time with it. Nomads is more the dice roll. I can't blanket recommend it, but at the same time, I do think it is better than its reputation in a lot of the reviews. I would absolutely not call it boring, but it is a acquired taste and probably not a movie that most people would. I mean, it's not better than anything that came after it. Let's put it that way. That's for sure. But I could see this being on a kind of loose rotation.
The idea is interesting.
Yeah, I think the concept is interesting. The execution it's captivating enough. It's just that you can tell that there are defects in it. It is an impure diamond for sure. But there are those little glimmers of, oh, yeah, okay, I could see this. And I could easily see this being remade. I'm sort of surprised that nobody has taken this direct idea and remade it, because with a little bit of tweaking, I think it could be really fascinating. Because, again, we don't get a lot of ghost stories like this. City set ghost stories that are this type. It usually either goes out full on evil, like Fallen.
You know what other one it actually makes me think of? It was the one with the wolves.
Wolfen? Wolfen?
Yeah, where the wolves are the old spirits.
Yes, actually, that's probably that is the completed version of this. That is the one where the elements were executed correctly. So that's actually really good that you remembered that. So yeah, there's actually a much better comparison. This is the not quite as well done version of Wolfen with a different. So yeah, if that guy had done this, that would be really interesting. So yeah, something like that. So I would love to see this exact idea remade by somebody with a slightly better handle on it. And I would be really interested what that would look like. But even in this version, I think for a lot of people, it would be an entertaining watch, something, especially if you've never heard of it, or because in McTiernan's thing, it never comes up because I didn't even remember. I didn't
probably
even
because the accent's so bad.
That part's terrible, but a lot of it he's not talking. A lot of it is just watching things and seeing what he's observing and watching the gang, and they are fascinating. I mean, because especially Mary Warrenoff, she's amazing. Even in her small amount of screen time, she is by far the most interesting part of the gang. So that's it. So you have a bunch of stuff that you can read and watch and everything else. And now that we're approaching the 3-hour mark, we should probably wrap up. So on that note, thanks for listening. And I don't know what I'll have to follow these two up, but we'll see. And we'll find out next week. Until then, enjoy your weekend, whatever you do. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.